Once you accept that thing, then you'll have that ISKCON Ottawa.
Okay, got it.
There were some sound issues too last time. There was.
I think it's okay if they whoever the speakers is if they use a microphone and if this is the mic connected to the laptop, something like that. Because if it's the laptop's inbuilt mic, it doesn't work really good.
Yeah. No, there's a setting in Zoom. It's called
To change it.
where the class is okay anyway, no problem.
The noise cancellation.
For the kirtan, there's
breaks and then
there's an option called live instrumental, which was for some reason disabled last time.
Yeah, okay.
So I'm trying to figure out how did I think it's in settings.
I found that on phone. I'm not sure where it is on laptop.
This logo. Okay. Here you go. Just go to what? Settings.
You can search
audio.
Yeah, you can search.
That's better. Sure.
It's just one option.
Yeah,
So this is very good. So very good.
Yeah.
Then the kirtan will be like good.
I'm gonna remember that. Yeah.
Okay.
That's pretty much it, right?
Yeah. And the Mataji wants to use the laptop. Yeah, she can use it. No problem. We'll just use this.
Yeah, see, it's mirrored.
It is mirrored, right?
Yeah.
Okay, this, would you know? I've never actually found this.
I think it has to do. Oh, wait, actually. Video settings. Yes.
Yeah.
And, oh, yeah, mirror my.
They're amazing. See, you're the right person for this type of. And yeah, if you're able to commit to one of them, just the second or fourth.
Yeah. Let me try.
I'll just look for.
Thank you so much, Prabhu.
No, thank you.
This is long due, but yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. It's big help.
Yeah, no, it's good. So we have put the laptop here for her to use. Okay.
Yeah. I think she should be okay with it, right? If she wants to. This will just be quiet. Yeah. Oh yeah, that's the one thing. Because normally we look at this to see if it's okay or not.
Oh yeah.
But maybe someone on the phone can just. It always is. Yeah.
This card used to be longer, right? Sure. Oh wait, there's a USB on this side. I should have plugged it in there.
Yeah.
That's okay. I think we can try now. Let's see if it works. I think you can select from video.
Yeah, it's okay. Great.
This is from.
She hasn't got it. Ask her.
Oh, for this speaker, right? That's what they got, right?
I don't know.
It's there in a box.
First it's there.
Yeah.
Garden is in the
Speaker,
cupboard.
yeah.
Aruddha. DDH. నాకు తెలియదు Aruddha.
I'm enjoying your class. It's really enjoyable. You discuss together.
This is
Taking back
Fantastic
from
job.
what I already on half of the house. So I'll probably stream it on like
but at least together once a week. Yeah. In each other's company. So I'm glad you like it. Good to see you there. All of you. I really thank you for organizing. Thank you for being here. Yeah. No, it's I signed up for this. Yeah. But it's nice to see people come by.
Yes. Late in the group, but it was still not session because many people ask me, if it is generally Mataji does not allow that. That's what I put. You already asked me. Please post it in the group.
We are able to offer.
But it's like what if something
I have to leave.
Sorry? Okay.
When you post it?
Yeah.
Was she using the laptop? What, what if something happens like,
Is it working?
like in the recording, if someone comes in, then you like don't have control. If you but it should be
It is
okay.
already started, right?
Yeah, totally started. Yeah.
We can always check from our phones. It is on the YouTube.
It's on YouTube as well. Yeah.
But it is on the
Sorry, I could not pick up on this one.
That's why we call it.
Oh, yeah. So when you move the camera, you have to check here if it's okay. If the angles are okay.
Is there a specific way that you want to work?
Do we have a bigger table?
Or we at least mute it?
If we have,
Mute it.
then
Yeah.
You mute it on YouTube and
let's
also on
get that one. Is that
Zoom.
okay?
We can stop.
Yeah.
On this we have
So it's smaller this side.
small introduction and also.
Hare Krishna everyone. Thank you so much for coming. And we have so many devotees join on the online, and so many people are watching on YouTube. So thank you all for making it. And we should be grateful to Aruddha Mataji for coming all the way from US. She's traveling at this early age for the benefit of the whole world. I have a small introduction about Mataji. Mataji is a senior disciple of His Holiness Gopal Krishna Goswami Maharaj. She is a good wife of Anantarupa Prabhu. And they moved to US in 1986 to Boise, Utah, USA. And they started a small weekly program at their house. And after 30 years, they made it into a very big Sri Sri Radha Banki Bihari. The deity is there. Mataji has two sons, Radhika Raman Prabhu and Gopal Hari Prabhu. Here is the story. Just by teaching them Srimad Bhagavatam, written by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, just by teaching them Srimad Bhagavatam from the very early age at home, they became excellent devotees. Not just that, they excelled in academics also. Both of them completed their PhD from Oxford University at the age of 21. Nowadays, to do PhD even throughout one's lifetime, that's not a joke, isn't it? So that proves that there's so much intelligence they gained from the homeschooling, from the parenting, Krishna conscious parenting, by reading Srimad Bhagavatam from the very early age. This experience gave her the conviction that the Bhagavatam can give a child everything he or she needs to become a well-rounded devotee and a member of society. And now her sons are professors at universities. They integrated well into the society. They are excellent devotees. They have greater influence on the society just through their occupation, obviously. Professors. And when she experienced all this, she wanted to give this knowledge to so many parents, those who want to bring their children as devotees and at the same time excel in every area, in every area of life. Aruddha Mataji is the author of Homeschooling Krishna's Children, which is published by the BBT. This book provides a complete guide to Krishna conscious parenting. With the help of a team of parents from around the world, she has been publishing Srimad Bhagavatam, a comprehensive guide for young readers. Cantos 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. They're all available on Amazon and they're here. Thanks so much, Mataji, for bringing all of them here. Her team creates engaging study content to guide children, parents, and teachers to study Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavatam chapter by chapter in a delightful way. Now she is traveling at the elderly age, all over the world to spread this message, how to raise children in Krishna consciousness. Thank you so much, Mataji. Thank you. We should all be grateful for her and we welcome you. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna. So glad to be here at ISKCON Ottawa. Never imagined, I never imagined I'm going to be here one day. I used to think Montreal, Toronto, but never Ottawa. So I'm so happy to be here and see this wonderful center flourishing. And first I want to begin by thanking my hosts, Govinda Mohini Mataji and his Prabhu for hosting me, Himanga Prabhu. Thank you so much. They've been just so wonderful, extending their home so kindly, so hospitable, so wonderful, just to be with them. It's been really my great fortune to actually visit their home. So, so today I'm going to be doing the seminar, The Art of Krishna Conscious Parenting, which is actually, it can be divided into 3 parts, okay? So it's divided, it's based on that ISKCON motto: purity is the force, books are the basis, and preaching is the essence. And this, as you notice, this is really the real core of our Krishna conscious life, isn't it? Building our own sadhana, which is purity is the force. Which, for children, it means setting up the home environment in such a way to make it conducive for their spiritual life. Because after all, charity begins from home. You have to really begin, the character training and everything really actually begins at home by the parents' own example, right? So that's the first part. And then the second part will be books are the basis, which is basically the academic curriculum. In other words, helping the children grasp, the Shastra more deeply. And and because that was really Prabhupada's desire, that children, he said, children should be able to, develop their own sadhana and and give it to others. Develop their own Shastra, study Shastra, and give it to others. This was his vision. Actually, this was the vision for Srila Prabhupada. So Prabhupada's real vision was to have a whole generation of Krishna conscious Vaishnava preachers. And he said, if you do that, then that will be the glory of our movement and the glory of your country as well. But if you even lose one Vaishnava, that would be a very great loss. So Prabhupada's, there were 3 things that were really high on his list. One was book distribution, secondly, deity worship, and thirdly, Gurukula. So you can imagine how it was such of prime importance for Srila Prabhupada to raise the future generation of Vaishnava preachers. And for that, he established Gurukulas, right? And so why? Because Srila Prabhupada wanted to stress on character development. This he found very, very important. And character development comes from knowing Krishna. From knowing Krishna, because all the qualities, whether material or spiritual, all come from Krishna. Right? So when we learn about Krishna, then naturally we are imbued with these wonderful qualities. So, and that comes from the simple process of chanting and hearing the holy names. And we can see in Shastra how all the devotees, they were able to please Krishna. How did they please Krishna? Is through their good virtues, through their great character. Any story that we see, Parikshit Maharaj story, or the character of Kunti Devi, all these personalities. So it's very important. Prabhupada said if the children don't develop good characters, like decorations on a dead body, it's pretty useless, right? So, so this was Prabhupada's vision. So a little bit about my story of how the whole thing happened for me. Now, when we moved to a place called Boise, Idaho, it was quite remote when we moved there, and we moved from Los Angeles. So I was feeling a loss of having a big temple where I could go to. And so there was nothing there, actually. There was no devotee association. So we thought the only way to have association is to create association. And that's when we started a center. And when and a little center where we started having programs, Sunday programs, right? So when my children were very small at that time, and when they grew to be 5 and 7 years old, or 3, or 5 years old, my older one, I started thinking seriously about school. Where am I going to send? And like any other parent, I started investigating different options. And obviously, as many parents opt to do, I send them to a private school, because public schools they don't have a very good reputation many times. So I looked for a private school, and I thought, well, this is the best option. and they started going there. And I decided to volunteer time to see how things were going. And to my surprise, I was quite disappointed, both materially and spiritually, both academically, and the value system was also disappointing. Right? So academically, I would sit in my son's classes, and I noticed that he would finish his math 20 minutes early, and he would really be bored. He would be just sitting there. So I thought, well, and there was nothing to challenge him. So we have to understand that schools are meant for the average. If you're above average, you're kind of bored, and if you're below average, then you actually become frustrated. So that was one thing I was quite disappointed with. And of course, what to speak of the moral values, right? We all know that can be quite lacking. Why? Because there is, there's no, religion is not taught about. There's no mention of God in the schools in the U.S. So, so we would. How could you really expect too much? And actually, good character comes from God consciousness. Only when we have God consciousness can people develop good character. So therefore, one time my son went to a school and he came back and he told me, "Ma, they spelled God with a small G," and he was so surprised. So. So anyway, so I actually I started looking for different options. Both my husband and myself, we started looking, okay, are there any options? And that's when I came to know about homeschooling. Now, homeschooling is a very well-established thing in the U.S. About 3 million people homeschool, and they are from very nice families. They're mostly Christian families who really care about the values of the what the children are learning. And so I thought, I was a bit scared about homeschooling. So I thought, okay, I'm just going to buy a curriculum. They sell curriculum in America. You can buy for the whole grade. So I said, okay, I'm going to buy a curriculum and I'm going to try it out for 3 months and in summer. And if it works, they're going to continue. Otherwise, I'll put them back to school. So in summer, we have 3 months off. So I started using that curriculum. And believe it or not, in 3 months, they finished the entire year's worth of work. In 3 months. And we were studying like 2 hours a day. Because there's so much quality time, right? There's so much quality time. So this is called the tutorial system that they practice even today in Cambridge and Oxford, where it's not like one big classroom with so many kids in that classroom, but rather small groups, more one-to-one. And even today in Oxford, I mean, they don't have this classroom system. They have this tutorial system where one teacher with one student or few students, right? So this is a very effective way. So because there's so much quality time. And parents actually, I found out, I realized that they're natural teachers because they really know the weaknesses. Sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes parents don't feel very qualified to do that. So I got really enthused and I said, okay, let's do this then. And I pulled them out of school and I started teaching them. And then I started getting dissatisfied with the curriculum that they offered me. I thought, well, maybe, because we were stuck with the books, if they wanted to go on a more advanced level, then I had to go and find other books. I said, and I had a great desire to study Srila Prabhupada's books myself, and also to teach to my children. So I thought, okay, why don't I start this? Why don't we read Shastra and study from Shastra? And so that's what I did. We started studying Srimad Bhagavatam. So this is what our schedule looked like, okay? In the morning, we got up, and it was not possible for them to get up at 4:30 in the morning because running a center meant we had to do a lot of things. There were festivals and so many, and that would take us late into the night. So I decided, okay, I'm just going to do it when they wake up. So mostly it was like 6 o'clock or something. 6:30 we had a morning program. And then we started out with that. We did the whole thing. And then we would sit down and read Srimad Bhagavatam. And the Srimad Bhagavatam that we read would carry us from between 1 hour, 2 hours, sometimes even longer, because they enjoyed it so much. So because we did it as a discussion. We read and we discussed, read and discussed. And we talked about so many things, like one thing would lead to another thing with another thing. So in this way, and then of course there was no bell ringing, okay, it's not time for the next class. So that was a big asset. And also children really enjoyed it. If you ask my children what they did in their homeschooling, they will tell you that it was one big long playtime. They can't remember any studies because Srimad Bhagavatam is just so attractive, right? When you study Shri, it's not like a schoolwork. So they became very, very, they were very, and I noticed how they looked happier, and they also looked like they were grasping a lot of things. I will hear about that section of Srimad Bhagavatam where the books are the basis section, where Prabhupada says the study of his books is master's PhD. That's what Prabhupada says. In other words, his books are such high caliber that if somebody reads his books, he can be, masters. And Srimad Bhagavatam covers every subject matter in the world. There's nothing that you don't know, It's very comprehensive like that. So this is how my journey in homeschooling started, okay? So this is not a seminar to get you all to homeschool, okay? This is a seminar just to help you to, no matter what situation you are in, whether you're going to this wonderful school here in Russell, with the Montessori school, whether you are sending them to public school, whatever your options are, the idea behind it is to develop this faith that what Srila Prabhupada has given us, he's given us everything. Everything is within his instructions. Everything is within his books. Everything is within the process that he gave us, right? In other words, when we live by the instructions of Srila Prabhupada and do what he envisioned for our children, all success is guaranteed. And believe me, I was a new mother when I started homeschooling. I had not read any of Srila Prabhupada's books. I was, just a new devotee. So, if somebody like me who was just struggling to be a devotee, and just, if I could have some success just by this, you can imagine somebody who's, already a seasoned devotee and has already read Srila Prabhupada's books and, is in that position. So, in other words, the books and Srila Prabhupada's process is so very potent, that it can give wonderful results. And this is what I'm here for. In other words, to understand the basics of what Srila Prabhupada gave us and to develop this faith that we can do it, that anybody can do it. And actually there's a quote by where Prabhupada quotes Jiva Goswami, where he says, Srila Jiva Goswami remarks in this connection that every child, if given an impression of the Lord from his very childhood, suddenly becomes a great devotee of the Lord, like Maharaj Parikshit. One may not be as fortunate as Maharaj Parikshit to have the opportunity to see the Lord within the womb of his mother. But even if he is not so fortunate, he can be made so if the parents of the child desire him to be so. Amazing, isn't it? Amazing. In other words, Srila Prabhupada is saying, Jiva Goswami is saying, there's not just one Dhruva or one Prahlad, but any child can become another Dhruva or Prahlad. And we see that in the society today. Just in one span of time, in one generation, we see the result of how this process has worked on our children and also on the back to Godhead. And we can see the how strongly, how powerful this process is, right? That in one lifetime we can generate. And these are people who joined ISKCON and Prabhupada very, like when they were like 20 or something like that. We see the example of Kadamkanand Swami Maharaj, amazing devotee. He was not, to me, he's none other, just like Parikshit Maharaj. He died like a soldier, isn't it? If you see his life story, he was running the the Vrindavan temple, right? He was the president there. He was shot by a gangster, and he was bedridden for one whole year, where he could not even move. And then when he was healed, then he came and he was just like a soldier again, fighting for Prabhupada, So and the way he left his body was just amazing. So we see the results of this process just with in one lifetime, right? What to speak of our children who've been born into the moment, right? Who are starting. I mean, even as Indians, we grew up. Some of us grew up in vegetarian families and with some Vedic culture, but none of us can say that we grew up chanting the holy name of the Lord or hearing Krishna Katha from day one. None of us. But these children have been given that opportunity. So obviously they are not ordinary, right? They are very special devotees. Like Krishna, like says in the Bhagavad Gita, there's different types of devotees. Those devotees who are born in the families of devotees, they've actually practiced Krishna consciousness for a very long time. Then they get this opportunity to be born in devotee families. So what is our role as parents is to help the living entity, the soul, in its journey back to Godhead, isn't it? None of us decided that these children would be born in our families. Did we decide that?
No.
Did we? No. It just happened, right? They were in our, before we knew, they were born in our families, right? So in other words, it's just a broken journey. A broken journey that we are simply trying to, complete that journey. So it becomes our most important responsibility is to make our children good devotees. It's our most important duty. And Rishabdev in the 5th canto says that, right? That in other words, anybody who gives shelter to anywhere, whether it's guru, parent, demigod, anybody who provides shelters to a dependent the prime duty is to make sure that dependent goes back to Godhead. Otherwise, one actually suffers, has to take the responsibility. One has to suffer reactions for that. So these children, in other words, they are not ordinary, and so we try to, among all the things, even though materially what happens today is that we put so much emphasis on the scholastic achievement, and we tend to oversee, not to put much importance in their spiritual development. But here, because all the material qualities that we are hoping our children will have, they come from the spiritual. It's not the other way around. And Prabhupada says all the demigods are waiting with folded hands at the door of the devotee, waiting for them to accept them. So, all the wonderful demigod qualities that we are hoping our children will have them one day, they're coming from the spiritual. They're coming from Krishna. So anyway, so just by doing this, by them, following the morning program, doing the Srimad Bhagavatam, what did we do after that? We went out, and this was basically our daily thing, almost. And then we went out into the city to actually apply that knowledge. In other words, we started looking for. I would think about, I would plan ahead of time, but we would go to get engaged in preaching programs. And Srila Prabhupada has given so much, right? Harinam, book distribution, school programs. That is a big part of our schedule, is to go to schools and to classrooms and to present Krishna consciousness to others. Of course, we were doing that presentation, and the children was simply, they were watching, they were observing, and also participating in some way, right? Just kirtan and applying tilak or dots and things like that. So that had a very big effect on them, right? And that comes to be the third part of the seminar, which is preaching is the essence. When we give Krishna to others, when we share Krishna with others, then our own faith solidifies, right? When we have to sit down and give a class, then we have to make sure we know the philosophy really well, right? The same thing happens with children. When they share Krishna with others, that's why reaching out was such a big part of my homeschooling. And I can, say with all honesty that a lot of my success in educating them was because of this, of reaching out to others, sharing Krishna with others, because with it came that faith. It solidified their faith. when you share Krishna with others, especially when children, especially people like to hear children speak, isn't it? It's very, very attractive, right? So when they speak and they share, and everybody applauds, what does it do to them? They feel very proud. And how do they feel? Oh, I'm proud to be a devotee of Krishna. Why? Because everybody is applauding it. So that becomes a very important part. Of course, there's festivals, there's dramas, playwriting, so many things that children can be engaged in. And if you notice, all this is part of their education, right? Sometimes we think education means sitting behind a desk for 8 hours. In other words, until you're sentenced to a desk for 8 hours a day, you cannot be educated. That's what people think, right? But this is really not true. Most of the education actually happens outside the school, away from the desk, in other words, right? So this is what Srila Prabhupada has given us, all this. In other words, he said, what are the 3 components of a child's education? Developing their own ability, their own sadhana, studying shastras, and then sharing it with others. So these are the 3 things he said. So now we'll go to the first section, which is purity is the force. So we're going to speak about some of the things that we should do and some of the things that we should avoid. So we'll cover first some of the things that we should try to avoid. And that is avoiding screen time and limiting internet. And I'm sure all of you already know how detrimental this can be, if it's not controlled, right? So I have heard that in the school here, in the Montessori school, the children don't even take phones with them. That is the best thing I heard. It was so wonderful. Actually, in Silicon Valley in America, a lot of the schools there, where the children don't even have phones. 75% of the kids don't even have phones. Because their fathers or mothers, they work for these big phone companies. And they know how detrimental it is. One time, a reporter, interviewed, what's his name, the founder of Apple?
Steve Jobs.
Steve Jobs. And he said that your children must be having the latest gadgets, the latest phones. And surprisingly, he said, well, they don't even own phones. They don't even have phones. And that was really shocking, right? Why? Because he knows, as the owner of iPhones, he knows that how detrimental it is, that he doesn't even give it to his own children. But everybody else has it, right? So this is the situation where people who work, they know how bad it is, but they give it to us. They make a fool out of us, right? Now, what is wrong with this? There's 2 basic things that are detrimental. One is the content, and everybody, I'm sure none of you can argue with that, right? The content. Because as devotees, we're trying very hard to follow the 4 regulative principles, right? And the internet breaks these 4 regulative principles. Nobody can argue with that, right? It's all about meat eating, intoxication, gambling, and illicit sex. So at once, it's like lighting a fire and pouring water at the same time, right? We're trying so hard to be devotees, but at the same time, we're exposing ourselves to all these things. And it does have an effect. We can't say that, I know. So the content. Well, some people say that, what about the good shows?
The educational shows.
The educational shows, right? So there's a saying in America, I'm sure is the same here. 1 glass of wine is good for you. It's good for your health, right? But tell me who stops at 1 glass of wine? Nobody. You drink 1, and then it ends up at 2, 3, and pretty soon you're drunk, right? So this is the nature of the screen, is that you watch television, you watch something for like 15 minutes, you say you promise 15, it turns into half hour, 1 hour, it keeps on and on. This is the nature. This is the nature of television and screen time. So that is the problem with educational shows. And also, what we study, what we learn from, these educational shows, like one mother said, my child, she she learned reading all through this video one show. But the problem with that is that this made a study that when we learn things from on the screen, then our retention is very little, the retention value, right? In other words, how much you can retain. For example, now when you watch a movie, the screen changes every few seconds. Actually, there used to be a time where one screen changes to the next. It was like maybe 5 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes. Now it's less than what, I don't know, 13 seconds or something, because people don't have the patience. They cannot sit through one scene for too long, and this is the result of screen time, that our ability to retain is getting less and less and less. Okay, whereas if you read a book, there's a whole different thing. And what the problem with this, the other problem is the medium. Okay, so in other words, it's passive learning rather than active learning. It's a one-way download from the tube to the brain of the person watching, right? It's a one-way download. There's no interaction going there. So what happens? There's no creativeness. There's no creativity. They've done studies that brain becomes lazy. So brain is like a muscle. The more you exercise, the better it gets. There's never a situation where the brain becomes tired. People say, "Oh, my brain is tired," but actually there's never that situation, right? So it's like a muscle. So the muscle, when we expose ourselves, when children expose themselves to this medium, then the muscle becomes obsolete. It becomes old. And so therefore they lose their desire and their ability to be creative. And that's why they've done studies now. The reading and math skills are getting lower and lower. They're getting less and less because of that. Okay, when you read a book, then what happens? You have to decode the words and you have to imagine what's going on. If it's talking about a nice scene, a forest scene, or even a police chasing somebody, well, you have to imagine what's going on. You have to think and imagine and be creative, right? And that is naturally is better, right? And if you're hearing the radio, even then, you still have to imagine what's going on. So the hearing process through a radio or whatever the medium is way better than just watching. When you're watching the tube, everything is given to you. Your brain becomes mush, they say. So this is why even the medium is bad, right? And of course, there's other problems. The social media is a big, big problem now, right? For some of you who are going to school, I'm sure you're facing this challenge now, right? Because there's so much of that and so much exposure to our children of doing video gaming. Video gaming especially really detrimental, because they've done research that in video gaming, they release a hormone which is similar to that when you take drugs. When you take cocaine, it's the same thing, right? A hormone is released called dopamine, and which creates urges to keep taking more and more and more. And the same phenomenon happens in video gaming. Parents don't know that and they don't think much of it, but it's very, very detrimental, because the tendency is for children to get addicted. It's just, it's presented in such a way, right? Besides other problems. Children who are too much on the screen, on the internet, they become very agitated. They lose their compassion for others, and they have anger problems, and they have a tendency to harm themselves. And it's very, very true in today's world. This is happening. I travel all over the world, and I still, among devotees, I hear stories where children have, threatened suicide with their parents because they've taken this phone from them. There was one mother in India who came crying, and she says her child is addicted to pornography. Now, this is not something we think is going to happen to our children, But the problem is that if they are too long on the internet, if they're using it for entertainment rather than strictly for what they need to, then what happens is they end up in sites like that. Now, children are not looking for that. They're not to be blamed because they just simply, if that site comes on them accidentally, they're curious naturally, and their curiosity will take them on that. It's a huge problem in America now. Children, there's what, 22% of visitors on these porn sites. There's 22% of them under 10, and then over 10 until 18 or 20, the percentage is way higher, right? And they're so addicted, and they own that the addiction is so bad that they need help, but they cannot go to anybody for help because they're so scared.
Are we taking questions at the end, Mataji?
Yes, after this section. Very quickly. I was in Denmark, and one young girl was listening to this seminar, and she came up and she said, I can totally understand, what you're saying. I'm addicted to my phone, and I can't live it. And my parents, my mother, wants to take it away from me. She knows it's a problem, and I get so angry. I can't control my anger. And I know my intelligence says that this is not right, but I can't do anything about it. So there's so many children who actually need the parents as parents that we don't realize. There's one person by the name of Ted in America who does these interviews. He's helping parents understand this. So he interviews young people to see, to get their opinion. And he gets young people, who've been introduced to phones at the age of 10 and things, or even earlier, just like, saying things like, how everything evil is at my door. This is how they speak. Everything evil is my door. I wish my parents had not given me this so early in my life. I've contemplated everything. Suicide and everything. Suicide rate is going up. There's one school in Utah, it's gone up like more than 100%, it's gone up. And all this is due to social media and social media is the most unsocial thing because it is not about community. It's not about real community. It's a fake world. It's not a real world. There was a time when children would come to their parents, wow, you look so nice. Now where do they go for approval? Social media. How their friends are thinking about them. What they think about them. Their whole life depends on those likes, The wonderful things that they see is not real. They don't know the story behind it, right? There's one parent who was in Mira Road, where I did a seminar, and she came and she was saying that my 18-year-old is completely addicted. He's got serious depression problems. He won't get out of his room. Very nice devotee. And now he's got a real clinical problem, right? This is getting to be, 10 years from now, they're predicting we will realize the harmful effects of this. And just like smoking in America, now it's going down, right? Because of all the publicity, everything that's been going on, right? It's been useful, right? So we're going to see that happening with these phones and social media and all that. But the problem is, it's going to be too late for our children. So we have to wake up and take action. And how do we do that? It's become a part of life. For those of you who are sending your children to school, you have to have internet. You have to have internet access because the teachers are giving their homework, which you have to use the internet for that. And little 5-year-olds are walking around with an iPad now. It's like you can't avoid it anymore. So what do? You use it for the purpose for which you have to use, for emails, for the adults, and for children for doing their schoolwork, and then you turn it off. Don't use it for entertainment. Don't use it for browsing. Right? Of course, if you can avoid it completely, like in homeschooling or in the school that we have here, then it's wonderful. because they don't really need it. Sometimes we get so desperate, because children are just a lot of work, right? And there's no help. So this becomes an easy way out, right? Hand them the phone. I have devotees who come and ask me, I have this service and my wife has this service. We just hand out the laptop to them. Is that okay? No, it's not okay. I went to Pune and temple, and I went for the seminar, and I saw two little children, devotee children, very young, 4 years old or something. They have this phone and busy watching this cartoon or something, and the mother inside is working on making a garland for Lord Krishna. Obviously, Prabhupada said children are our deities. We should take care of them, just like we take care of deities. So this is very, very, we have to be very careful about this. Now there is times when it's an emergency. You can use it for that. Traveling, there's a 12-hour, 20-hour journey. Okay, maybe a little bit, right? So this becomes our association. Very soon it becomes our association. And you know how association is so crucial in their life, in our lives. I remember my one younger son, he was traveling. It was a long, long flight. And they grew up not watching television or any of these things. And he was thinking, okay, maybe I should put something on, So he turned it on. And what was going on was a 40-minute show about how stupid your parents are. He talks about that, So you can imagine, it becomes bad association. Now children have so many authorities now. That's why it's so hard to have, to be their benefactors and their authority, because there's so many authorities out there, right? Of course, there's teachers. If they are teachers, and of course there's, internet and all these things that you see, they're all authorities, and they're powerful authorities. They have a huge influence that we cannot get into, right? So it becomes a big problem. So we have to remember, this becomes, if we don't control it, this becomes the association, and then a very powerful association, okay? Okay, so very quickly I'll go through 3 more items of the things that we should do for our children. So this is the thing we should avoid, but what should we do is a good morning program, right? Prabhupada was so keen on morning program. He, among all the things that he insisted for adults and children, was a morning program, because it is so, he understood that it's a way to, to cleanse our heart, to purify our hearts. When we chant and dance, especially with the children, when they chant and dance and take the holy name, their hearts are cleansed. And a lot of the problems of discipline and misbehavior is also solved. You know that? Because it cleanses the heart. So they're still naughty, but they're naughty in a different way. It's different, So that's what it is. So morning program makes them peaceful and well-behaved. So we can be flexible. In our situation, in a grahastha situation, where it's not possible. In my case, 4:30 was a little difficult. Just again, running the center, festival, this, that. And also my husband came home from work very late, and they wanted to stay up and play with him and all that. So it was hard, But they did go to bed on days, that were normal days. But so you can be flexible and do it later. But the idea is that you don't skip it. In America, they say anything that you do for 66 days, it becomes a habit. What to speak of children who go through life doing a morning program? It becomes part of their nature, so much so that they can't give it up, They just do it. They automatically do it. And if they are really, really busy, they'll sing the prayers. If they can't do anything beyond that, they'll sing the prayers. To the extent that if they have to run somewhere, they'll do it in the car. Have you seen many devotees reciting the prayers in the car while they go? Yeah. But the idea is that we always wake up. The best, of course, is to do it at home. So one must do. I remember when my children went to Oxford, they were living together together with other devotees. There was an apartment, and all the devotees lived together. And these were devotees from all over the world, Japan and everywhere else. And they would do a morning program. So that's a nice thing about association. When I was trying to decide where my children would go for college, my spiritual master said, make sure they go to a place where there's association. Now imagine I homeschooled them, raised them in Krishna consciousness, but yet it's so important to send them in a place where association. We can never say that I've done what I've done and now it's safe. No, Maya is so strong. So in other words, there were opportunities in America, in very good colleges where they could have gone. But we opted to send them so far away to London just because there was association. The devotees lived together, they worshiped together, they cooked together. And my younger son used to say, if I didn't have the Bhaktivedanta manner, I don't know what I would have done. Because that was his party. The Oxford University is such an elite university, right? You know what it's known for? It's known as a party institute. It's well known for the party, and it's known as a party institute and a drinking institute. That is the quality of today's higher institutes of learning, right? Now he gives a nice episode where the first day of college, in Oxford, what does it feel like? So it's called the orientation day. All the kids, the new kids, they sit around a big, long, oval table with a provost there. And he comes there, and then this is what happened. So he tells me the story, Then he gets up from his seat and says, so something like that, I don't remember the exact words, but he announces that, so Oxford University is known as a party institute, a drinking institute. Drinking is part of our culture, and drinking today is going to be part of your culture. And then he passes on these wine glasses to everybody with wine, and everybody was meant to drink and toast, right? It's the first day of college, right? And here is my son sitting there, wondering, what am I going to do now? Everybody, is past this. And then everybody starts drinking. And then everybody notices, because it's a small number of people, number of students. Everybody starts drinking, but they notice this boy is not drinking. So they went after him. They started pressuring him. They found out his name. It's easy to say, Gopal. So he said, come on, Gopal, drink, man, drink. It's just one sip. You're not going to die just drinking one sip. And there was so much pressure for him to drink. They went after him. And the pressure was so thick, he didn't know what to do. And he started thinking, what should I do? Maybe, just a sip, maybe, something like that. And then, of course, he wasn't going to, by Krishna's grace, Krishna saved. And there was this one boy, and then there was this one boy who who was half drunk by then. He had drunk, talking about this one glass of wine, right? By then he had drunk like 3 or 4 glasses, and he was drunk. And in his drunken state, he said, come on, man, leave him alone, man. Leave him alone. It's okay. So the pressure died down. And he told us that he was thinking at that time, when this was going on, what is my spiritual master going to say if I drink this? He was initiated by then. What is my spiritual master going to say to this? I can't let him down. You see, that also brings home to a very important point, is that he wasn't thinking, what are my parents going to say? He was thinking, what is spiritual? In other words, the power of pure association, the divine power, is so strong. This is what saves a child. This is what saves a child. When push comes to shove, when there's a big challenge in front of them, to break their principles or do that, what helps is Krishna and Krishna's association. The divine power, we call it. And that's why, again, bringing home to that point, the importance of Krishna conscious education for our children. is the most important thing. Is the important thing. Because yes, we can do as parents so much for our children. You know, we are so attached and we are so committed in helping them, right? It's natural, it's important. That love, that affection, that commitment. And that makes a difference, you know. I mean, when they started having problems in the Gurukula, they found out that children who had some very strong connection with their parents at home, they did better. And even in Gurukulas, you know, in ashram situations. Right? So in other words, that committed relationship that we have with our children is very important. That does save them, you know, because they go through a stage, a difficult stage of their life, right? The teenage, when they're growing into adolescence. It's a difficult time. Right? It's very difficult. I mean, our acharyas have spoken a lot about that. You know? Actually, our acharyas have spoken a lot about parenting. And they say it's this period of life when they're growing into adolescent is a very, very difficult period. Because their whole body is going through an upheaval, you know, their hormones and everything. And therefore, they're having a hard time. You know, the intelligence is becoming rebellious, the emotions are all over the place, they can't understand what's happening to them, leave alone us understanding. They themselves cannot understand what's going on in their body, right? At that time, it becomes very difficult for them. And they end up with some scars in their life, right? So, in order to minimize the scars, this association of Krishna consciousness, this is what helps, right? So, for some, they face challenges, and this committed relationship with the parents does help, wherein they're thinking they don't want to disappoint their parents. If they have some bad thoughts or something they shouldn't be doing that they do, it's this connection with the parents that kind of stops them. But there comes a time when even that doesn't work. Even that doesn't work. And that's when the association of Krishna, that's the only thing that helps them. Because it's so purifying. It's so purifying. So this is why the morning program and deity worship and all these things are so very important for our children. Because when everything else fails, even we will fail. Right? At a certain point in their life, where they will, you know, they will not be able, our instructions and our emotion, you know, their emotional attachment to us may not be enough, right? This is when the Krishna consciousness, the samskaras that we've given them, the samskaras we've given them of doing a morning program and festivals and all these culture of Krishna consciousness that we've given them, right? All that is going to become very, very valuable, right? Okay. So eating prasadam, of course, we try our best. Okay. Now this is not completely possible. Right? I said that if you go through life just doing this one thing of eating only prasadam, you go back to Godhead. That's a pretty good deal, isn't it? Just always making sure to eat prasadam, right? It's a very important thing actually, because food affects our consciousness, right? Food affects our consciousness. I don't know if you've had the experience. If you're always eating prasadam and you go and you eat some non-prasadam, you feel different, right? You feel like, oh gosh, what did I do today, right? You know, we kind of take a step backwards, right? So it's very important to give them broadness. And yeah, and so children, of course, as younger children, they experience world through their taste, you know. So they need a lot, right, of variety and things like that. But I tell you, it really helps, you know. There was one family, I was in Riga, Latvia, you know, in Europe, and there was this one family that I stayed with, and she was telling me that her son, a very nice devotee there, and this son of hers, he was a teenager or something, he ran away from home, just got influenced by kids in school and everything, and he just disappeared. And she was just so worried, and he didn't come back for several several months. And one day he came back, his mother's cooking. He was missing the prasadam at home. So let's not downplay it. The prasadam that you cook for him, and all that work that goes through it, it really pays off. That taste, that that attachment. They go out in college, and you see kids. They're going to college. They cook for themselves. There are many devotee kids. They'll start cooking for themselves. They cannot go and eat in that cafeteria because they've developed their taste growing up. I know one boy. He's in somewhere in America, and he refused to stay in the dorm, and he's in his own little apartment, and he cooks. I mean, it's not easy for somebody to be a student and cook, and he's training to be a doctor, a surgeon. So you can imagine how busy his life is, right? So it pays off. It's very, very important. Now, how do you manage in a world like this, especially if your kid is going to school? How do you manage to avoid, and even for yourself, if you're going to work, there's office parties, that colleague get-together, so many things, right? So we had one principle for each one we were practicing, my sons and my husband, is that we told people that we don't eat from a kitchen that cooks meat. Rather than saying that I'm a vegetarian, because vegetarian is not enough, because then people put all kinds of food in front of you, and they say, I promise you is vegetarian. But guess what? Vegetarian is not vegetarian. So if you tell them that I cook I don't eat food from a kitchen that cooks meat, okay, that solves the problem. So that's one thing. And then how do you go to like parties and office parties and things like that, is you order a big nice fruit platter or a salad. Okay? You can call ahead, you have an office party with all your colleagues, you call ahead, you order this nice big fruit platter. My son tells this one episode when he did that. And they actually, when this is a big, like an official party, the kitchen people over there, they feel sorry for you because you're not going to eat anything other than fruits. So they may make a nice big plate. And he says when the plate of fruits comes, everybody's looking like, wow, boy, this is really healthy. Maybe I should try that. Maybe I should become healthy. What do you do? And so they start asking questions like that. So, people actually respect people who stand for their principles, actually, But if you keep changing your story every day, then you become a laughing stock, right? But if you stick to your principles, people actually respect you for who you are. So this is one thing, when we set a good example to our children by doing this ourselves, then our children are actually going to follow that, right? Good association, very, very important. So our children may be going to school, Karmi schools, right? What do? Well, see, the thing that's really contaminated is not casual friendships as much as intimate friendship. Now, what is intimate friendship? Is when you share food and you share and you go to their homes. That's how you understand it must be avoided with friends who are not devotees. Sharing food and sleepovers. That's very important, right? Because we don't know. There's no control as to what's going on. So children, that is why it's very important. Like, a child comes and says, well, there's a birthday party in the evening, can I go? And things like that, right? So obviously there's intimacy there, right? There could be drinking, there could be, obviously there's going to be meat and things, but also other things, right? So we have to explain to the child that this is not something that we do, right? Now, how do you convince them? It's going to be the second part of my seminar, that is Shastra. Books are the basis. Now, parents ask that how do you do this? I mean, all his friends are going to this place, and you telling your child not to do it. Yeah, it's a little bit unfair, isn't it? Where they're exposed to a different kind of environment, but we're telling them something else, right? But how do you do that though, right? And that is where Shastra is so very important. Feeding the intelligence.
Shastra becomes the basis for children to understand why they're doing what they're doing. That conviction only comes from scriptures. In other words, yeah, I mean, it's simple things one can understand. Okay, I shouldn't lie. I should be honest. I shouldn't take down to it. But things that go deeper, there needs to be deeper answers. And that comes from the scriptures. But children, they question, isn't it? They question, why? Why? I'm not just going to accept this. You are devotees, but why do I have to follow what you do? You know? At a certain point, they start questioning. Why do we have to answer those questions? The reasons why we don't do that. And that comes from deep study of the scriptures. See, there's something like we have situations in life that we go through which are maybe like moral crises, right? But they are simple to understand. Why I should not drink or why I should not do this something. They're simple. They're moral crises. They're just about morality, right? But there are some things like ethical crises that are much deeper, where things seem they're two things, but they're both right. Which one do you decide on? Which is the higher principle? Which is the lower principle? And that comes from the scriptures. For example, Bali Maharaj, right? He was, his dharma was to listen to to obey his spiritual master, right? He had a big crisis in front of him. Should I be obeying my spiritual master or should I please Vamandev, right? How was he to decide? Right? The higher principles, and that was to please Krishna. Right? Arjun had the same dilemma. Should I follow the Kula Dharma or the Sanatan Dharma? Should I kill my worshipable superiors? Or should I do what Krishna is asking me to do? So all these crises come in our lives. It also comes in our children's lives, right? Some deeper questions, and they need some deeper answers. And these answers have to come from them, because they are faced in situations where we won't be there, right? So Srimad Bhagavatam is like that. I mean, it solves this deeper, it gives those deeper answers. More than any other scripture. More than Mahabharata, which is more about dharmic principles, right? But here, these are dharmic principles meant to love and serve and please the Lord. And that is what gives our children the character also, right? So this is all comes from the association that children get from these great personalities from Srimad Bhagavatam. That's also association, right? Besides the living personalities that we have in ISKCON today, the gurus, the sannyasis. My children growing up, they had 2 or 3 sannyasis who would come through Boise, right? And they had, just that 1 week they would be there. They had close association with them. And it had such a great impact on their lives. Such a great impact. Because these personalities are not, they're different, right? They've given up everything. And just even a moment's association with them can go a long way. And they would go and actually travel with them. Even, they went to India and things like that. So we should be also, very eager to get our children to associate with these personalities. And this thing I understood when they got older. When they were older, then I realized what a big impact it had on them. So when people open their homes, invite devotees, these personalities who come, it has a great impact on the children. So, and then also, so this is adult association, right? So more than the peer association, which is very, very important because children need to play. This is how they develop creativity. But also with more important purposes is the adult association. The kind of association that children get from their own parents. Of course, we set a nice example. And also with these other, great pure devotees in the movement. And also the personalities in the Srimad Bhagavatam, which are absolute figures, right? And why is this adult association very important? Is because children learn responsibility through adult association. Why is the problem today where children are just, they don't understand responsibility, right? It's because there's a huge generation gap between the children and the adults. It's not a gap anymore, it's a valley, really, right? It's a huge, and this is coming from this lack of interaction with adults that they are not getting anymore. Right? Now you see young people, they are their own different species, right? They have their own music, they have their own dress, they have their own language. They don't relate. You know, I was in Australia and this one parent, a man who came crying, says, you know, my child, he comes in the house and he doesn't even talk to me, he ignores me. And he knows I cannot do anything because there's so many problems now. If you say anything to the child, you know, there's social service will come. Right? He was literally crying, you know. So it's a huge problem. There's one family I've stayed with in one temple in India, really nice devotees. And there's children, all, you know, they're nice children. But I noticed they came home from school and the mother was, you know, and the mother was telling me that the young girl is going through something, and she, as soon as she comes home, she said, Mom, just keep your mouth shut. Don't speak, don't speak, don't speak. And the son is addicted to some comedy show, so he thinks everything is a comedy. He thinks of his parents are really funny or something. This is what's happening among devotees. So it's not like, you know, okay, we have to send them to school, but it's not like it's hopeless. I mean, it can still be, you know, we can still salvage the things, and we can, you know, the negative influences are there, but we can provide the alternative, the positive side, you know. And so many parents are looking into the future, and they know, I mean, now they're teenagers, and they kind of feel like they've already lost it, you know. They're not able to do anything about it. Because there comes a time where it's a little bit difficult now, then it gets very late, right? Of course, there's still ways you can do things, you know. So this is the last one, Devi worship. Again, it's very important. Bhaktivinoda Thakur has written a wonderful quote which goes something like, you know, religions that do not have any conception for deity worship, children who grow in that household, they tend to become materialistic and atheistic. So he says deity worship is the foundation of religion for all humanity, because it gives you know, something, a form by which children can understand Krishna as a person. Otherwise, you see, the whole world is becoming so impersonalistic, right? If children have to understand, and you see that a lot of these Indian young people who are coming for IT from India, they're coming getting jobs in Canada or USA. I mean, most of them by then are atheists. They have absolutely no understanding of what deity worship is. I mean, young people today, right? They've already lost it. They've already, you know, adopted atheism, right? So in other words, when a child is not growing up with, you know, understanding the form of Krishna, how he's a person, to develop that later takes a lot of faith and work, right? It's a natural way of evoking love of God. And of course, with children, we're talking about Krishna dolls, right, to begin with. And then as they get older, you can give them Gaur-Nitai deities, right, where they can worship. I remember when my children were very young, 5 years old, 3 years, one was 3 and 5, they had this Gaur-Nitai deities, 4 inches or 5 inches Gaur-Nitai deities. And because, you know, children's tendency when they're here, they only play, right? They have to play, right? So this becomes a form of play, except we set boundaries, because we are there, right? So they would spend time bathing them, and then putting clothes, ornaments, putting them back on the altar. We make a little offering. Then we do an arti. And I noticed how absorbed they would get. You know, like it is so absorbing. So this becomes a natural way. And Prabhupada talks about himself also, like, right? When he was a young boy, his father gave him Radha Krishna. He says couple of forms of Radha Krishna. and he saw them as play, and those very deities became objects of worship for him later on, right? So, yeah, so we can do what we can, okay, what we can, but it's very valuable. It's very valuable, and they actually develop love for Krishna. Okay, so we stopped with this is the first section. If anybody has any questions in this section that we covered, please feel free. We'll give a little time for that, and then we'll go to our second section, which is books of the basis. Yes.
Krishna Mataji. Mataji, you talked about the morning program for the kids, and you also mentioned that it should happen regardless. We should not skip it. It may happen later in the time. But you also spoke about discipline. So, sometimes we face situation where kids want to sleep in the morning, and the discipline factor is lost.
Sleep in the morning. Oh, you mean?
Yeah, they want to sleep late, and then the discipline factor is lost.
Yeah, but it's up to you then to put them to bed earlier, right?
Yeah.
So it depends on, you just put them to bed early and wake them up. Just wake them up early then. Depending on how much, sleep they need, you can put them to bed earlier, and then accordingly. I mean, it's best to do it what Prabhupada says, at the right time, 5 o'clock, 4:30, 5, whatever. It's really, it's the best option, but if you cannot do it, don't just not do it. You still do it. Yeah, okay? Okay, thank you. Yeah. Yes. Yes.
So I've heard of your son Radhika Raman Prabhu and all of his glories, and I guess all the glories really come from you teaching him in this way. I'm so sorry, I came in a little late. Could you give us a quick little synopsis of what you had done to raise him, and then where he went in life, just so we can get an overview of the potency of what you're saying and the effectiveness of it?
Okay, I'll do it in the second section. Okay, it becomes more relevant over there. A little bit about that. Okay.
And then the second question.
Okay.
So most people will be worried about, children becoming a material success. If they're only focusing on this, then, maybe they'll become sannyasi or, someone who's maybe not materially well off, and then that could be a problem. This could be some parents' worries. So what would you suggest, or is there truth to that, and how to navigate that between spiritual success and material success?
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, the core has to be there. See, it's not a question, I mean, we are really spiritual beings, right? We are spirit souls. So there is no really question of balance in one way when you think about it, right? Everything is coming from that spiritual core. In other words, when we forget the spiritual core and we just think only of the material, then pretty much everything is lost, right? So in other words, as long as we keep the spiritual core intact, the spiritual life intact, then everything else will naturally fall into place, you see? But if we ignore that part, then we really haven't gained much. We haven't gained anything yet, really. Right? So, in other words, the material is important, obviously, but not at the cost of ignoring the spiritual. Right? Okay.
So you're mentioning how 8 hours. Children usually we think of studies 8 hours at the desk. That's gonna amount to their success. So you were kind of alluding how that might not be the case. And what's your experience of children's actual most development? Where does that come from for their greatest growth?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's all three. In other words, if you just do one, then it's not complete. So everything has to be there. Their own development, personal development, the sadhana, and then their study and also reaching out others. So all three has to be balanced nicely, So in other words, if we just did the sadhana part, or if he even did the first two and not did the second and third, then we are isolating them, isn't it? And we can't isolate them. I mean, we insulate them, but we don't isolate them, right? So everything has to fall into place, right? So if we just did studies, but we didn't help them develop their own personal sadhana and do devotional service, then that would be also detrimental to them, right? So in other words, it's the most important part of our devotional life is to do our morning program, right, as devotees. So the same thing happens with our children. Right? Flexibility is always there, but it still has to be done. Right? So in other words, we do all three together. Mm.
You mentioned that you used to wake up early in the morning with your kids, starting program 6:30 or 6 o'clock, and you would read 1 hour Srimad Bhagavatam. At what age you started?
Okay, so we're going to come to that. Yeah, so let's wait for that. Okay, anything else in this? Yes.
I could see that to give Krishna consciousness, we kind of restricted in some activities like engaging kids in outside games or video games or playing with other sports. Did you ever heard from your children when they grew up, when they're really upset and they're like, hey mom, this basically kept us home and gave this knowledge, but I wish I had some other connections or some memories of those. Did you ever heard
Yes, I know what you mean. Yeah, in other words, they feel like they've been deprived of something exciting out there, right? That they may have missed because they were at home. I didn't, my children didn't experience that because it was just, like I said, it was one big play for them. There's homeschooling, So because we're doing a lot of things which was really made them excited and happy. And so depends what you're doing. If that's why I meant, if they're just sitting at a desk and working, obviously they will feel like that. But if they're not, they're doing so many other things, and it's transcendental. But they're thinking they're not doing anything. They're playing. But I know how much education is going on. You see, that is the trick. I mean, the parents know, it's called the Iowa Basic Skills Exams, where homeschoolers can go and get tested, and they were doing really good. You see, so in other words, education is going on. Like when we had big festivals coming up, so we would spend that whole week learning about that festival. Janmashtami or Gaur Purnima. Then instead of doing regular school, or we would just work on that, on that personality, and then we do dramas and plays. Script writing, it requires so much writing work, right? Then what to speak of directing the play. So it was very different. Our schooling was very different. But there's a lot of work going on there, you see.
So what was also role of Prabhuji during all this?
Yeah, it was, he was really the backbone of everything because because I would say the temple was a very big factor, a big part of our success, whatever we had, because temple was our life. Everything, whatever, all activities were revolved around the temples, dramas, Harinam, book distribution, everything connected with the temple, right? Then, going out on programs and doing programs outside. If we didn't have the temple, I don't think we would have had the success. It's what Prabhupada has given us in terms of centers and temples is the biggest blessing, and we can really utilize it, in a way which is very advantageous for our children. We should utilize this programs, making children a very big part of our temple. Like in Boise, we would have children come. There was one child who was so good at this, he would build the whole sound system in the temple. He's just like a whiz in that. And sometimes they would help cook and things, or, of course, kirtan is always something they love. So keeping them really involved and active. Because see, if children are not active in Krishna consciousness, they will lose it. If you don't take your children with you when you go for Krishna conscious activities, well, what are they going to do at home? Get on their phones, right? You take them everywhere you go, you do everything with them. When we were in Chowpatty, we gave a seminar there, and believe it or not, 50% of them were brahmacharis. And you think, what are they doing here? This is about grahastha and parents. And they said the reason we are here because we would preach to the grahasthas. Okay, Chowpatty brahmachari, you heard of them? They're quite good, right? They would preach to the grahasthas, and they were worried because the parents were such wonderful devotees. They would come and do seva and this and that, but the children not interested. So they wanted to learn the techniques of how to bring the children in, because this is not good at all. Our youth, our future generation, what's going to happen, right? This would make Prabhupada very sad, right? And what were they doing at home? Obviously, they would go on their phones and do all that, and there's nothing parents could do to bring them. So I would say, always have your children involved in what you're doing, right? Because if they don't feel a part of it, they're going to lose it. And that's why temple becomes such an important place, because here is a place where they can come, do some volunteer work, do some service, get involved. Children should be given, some of them, they should be given some leadership roles, Maybe give a class, the older ones, once in a while, right?
Yes. Do you say that in order to raise children in Krishna consciousness, do you say and think so at least one of the parents should be not working?
Well, you mean just even if the child is going to school? Yeah? That's what you're trying to say? Yeah, I mean, no, this is totally a personal decision. Obviously, this is the Vedic model, it's nice. If you can do that, it's actually very good. It's the best. But if you cannot, and for some economic reason, they have to go to work, then you have to adjust accordingly, But yeah, when children come home, it's nice that the mother's there, at least, and can relate and do things with her. I would naturally go towards, that model is much better. But, I traveled to Europe, and in Europe, I mean, both husband and wife have to work. There's no way they can avoid working, because of financial reasons, right? So, but if you have that opportunity, there are many families coming from the Indian background where they can easily manage with one income families, but they still want to work. Now that is not such a good idea. When one income is enough, and because there's no limit to how much we need, right? Right. So, and then we get real ambitious, and then, and all that, okay, this will bring it. I need that money so that when he goes to college, he'll need all that. Well, see, what the secret, we tried out is that for the undergrad, don't send them to big Ivy League or colleges, okay? Because it's just a waste of money. Any local university is good enough, okay? And if you get good and you do well there, then you can think of a nice university. Because any big university, they always have a quota there for taking students from smaller universities who are good, So if you spend money in undergrad so much, then by the time you get to graduate college, you have no money left, right? So this is another thing that you can keep in mind. That's what we did. We went to Boise State University for the undergrad, and then they went to Oxford University. Right? And there's no reason, and we didn't store money at all, My husband spent his money in building the temple there. So Krishna helps, right? So to keep earning money, two-income families just to build their college is not needed. Krishna will provide. If we do the right things, take care of our family nicely, and make our children Krishna conscious, Krishna will carry the land. Krishna will provide. But if you lost those years where you can help your children develop their Krishna, spend time with them, what have you gained? Of course, if there's a financial necessity, that's different, okay? But I know many, many cases where it's not. Okay. Anyway, that's just a more personal decision. Okay. Yes, sir.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Thank you for a wonderful ongoing session. Two quick questions about the screen time. It was said is limited or no screen time. So any suggestion on until what age there should be no screen time at all, and after what age they can see animations such as Little Krishna?
Oh, Little Krishna, yeah. So Little Krishna is that cartoon, right? So, I mean, you can have like family time together where you would watch a Krishna conscious video or something like that. It's okay, but don't make it into a regular habit. In other words, my daughter-in-law started, when the children were little, they would give such a hard time eating, during the eating. So she thought that she'd put this little Krishna just for the time when she's eating. You know what she noticed? They kept eating and eating and eating because they thought that the show is going to end, and then of course it turned from 15 minutes to like 20 minutes to half hour and kept increasing, and then she stopped it completely. And she started telling them stories. She realized that actually there's no way out of this. And then she started telling them stories during them. They seemed okay. They're growing up with no phones, nothing, So there is no, as long as you can manage without it, okay? But it's okay. I mean, we don't need to be fanatics. So in other words, there may be a time when we spend time together watching, this Mahabharata episode or something, or Krishna conscious, But the child knows this is family time, like we spend some time together. It's not like a usual regular time, And like I said, there's emergencies, in life that we go through, right? So keep it for that. And the child is not going to, he will understand, okay, this is just happening because this is emergency or this is family time, whatever. Okay, like that. Yeah, yeah. Okay.
So your kids had same degree of trust and bond with you versus their father also?
Yeah, I mean, the father is, has a different type of duty and relationship with him. Then, yeah, of course. There's no reason why not, why not they should be close to the father. I remember my husband took him on a tour of the national park to South Dakota, North Dakota for a whole weekend, and and they had so much fun together. I couldn't go, so there's different relationships in different ways. Yeah, sure, why not? And that's very important. It's important for children to build that relationship with both their parents, and that really helps if the family is, if they see that nice relationship between, I mean, there's always arguments, and that's all okay, to a certain level. It's okay, because Prabhupada said it's like I forget the example, maybe smoke without a fire or something. It's very something inconsequential. Of course, unless it gets serious, then one has to. But when they see that nice relationship, then children have more a tendency to follow. And with following comes good character. Like Prabhupada gave the example of Yudhishthira Maharaj, when Parikshit Maharaj was born. Everybody, the astrologer was trying to make the chart, and remember that chapter in the first canto where they were giving, they were mentioning how great he was, and likened him to all these great personalities. But Yudhishthira Maharaj was only concerned with one thing: is he going to follow his ancestors? And the reason is because with following comes good character. So the more the children follow in our footsteps, the better it is. And that happens when both husband and wife, they work together, in raising the children nicely. Okay. But obviously the husband is going to work and the wife is not. So the main burden of homeschooling was on me because he's at work, So okay. Should we take more or what should we do? Go on.
One last one.
Okay, one last one.
Mataji, if it is not already in the second part of your
Yeah.
class, I wanted to know, like, you spoke about the morning program, but what are the type of activities that we can engage the kids during the evening so that, it's not just the morning, but towards the evening when they close.
Okay, when they come home?
Yes.
Yeah, just engage. I mean, do some nice activities with them. Like you can read Srimad Bhagavatam, do a kirtan, so many things, right? Go to the temple. In other words, try to engage them in devotional activities because they've missed it all day if they're going to school, right? Yeah, so many things you can do. Anything other than screen time, okay? Even if it means playing a simple old board game, anything better than that, okay? Books are the basis. So this is a nice quote by Srila Prabhupada. Anybody, would you like to read, Prabhu?
Sure.
Yeah.
Good parenting means having firm faith in Srila Prabhupada's books. Our students, specifically, they should take care of reading Srimad Bhagavatam. We have therefore prescribed in our school, Dallas, and from the very beginning, if they begin education with Bhagavad Gita and then come to Srimad Bhagavatam and read the whole literature, then they will be more than MA, PhD. Even astronomy, astrology, politics, sociology, atomic theory, everything is there. Therefore, if you study Srimad Bhagavatam very carefully, then you get all knowledge completely. Throughout the whole world, whatever knowledge is there in, I think the
Oh, I see. Yeah. Oops. Sorry. Is in the Srimad Bhagavatam. That's the last one here. Okay, so these are some very few of the many quotes by Srila Prabhupada, who emphasized the importance of reading Srimad Bhagavatam not only for ourselves but for our children. Okay, so and he's saying that Srimad Bhagavatam it covers every subject matter, and Srila Prabhupada is not exaggerating. It's true, every subject. And I had some experience of that. When my children were reading Srimad Bhagavatam, like I said, sometimes it was 2 hours, sometimes even longer, because this was how I was doing all my language. So in other words, there's two subjects that are very important, for somebody to be well educated. Okay, one is language and one is math. Now, language takes care of all the humanities, and math takes care of the sciences. So if you make your children strong in these two things, then they can practically pick up anything. And this is what happened. When we're doing Srimad Bhagavatam, and Prabhupada is saying it's more than a master's PhD, that means it's making them into master's PhD. That's how advanced the language is, right? I mean, this is not very difficult to understand, right? As you read Srimad Bhagavatam, you can see the analytical thinking, the good reasoning skills, the analogies Srila Prabhupada used, all that abstract thinking. It's just layers and layers and layers and layers of it, right? So this is what, all this language was coming from that, which I didn't know. This is after, when it happened, then I realized that, okay? So English, so Bhagavatam became the basis for our language, and then math becomes the basis for all the sciences, right? So with the result that after, now here we are talking about the Bhagavatam, right? So our homeschooling was just about 5 to 6 years. Why? Because my children went to college. very early, 12, 13 years old, they went. And this happened by accident. You asked me to talk a little bit about that. So this happened by accident. This is not something I planned for. I could never even dream of that. So what happened is that I was running a Govinda's restaurant, me and the kids, imagine. It was like one of those things, you know. I'm not going to talk about that, but it was too much of an endeavor that we realized later on. In our passion, we did that, right? So, because my husband had to go to work, right? So, in 5 to 6 years of just studying Srimad Bhagavatam, we were running this Govinda's restaurant, like I was saying, and this chair of the English department, Dr. Sahani, he would come to eat there. And he started noticing that the children were speaking so well, you know, their language was really good. And he was really impressed, and he said, you know, you should give them a class at this university. He was chair of the English department. I said, really? But they're too young. He says, no, do that. I was thinking, oh, this is really good. This is coming to a point. I was coming to a point where I was thinking, what is next? You know, what is next in their homeschooling? And I thought, well, it's not such a bad idea, but I had no idea how it's going to happen, right? So he said, you go and talk to the dean, because they were underage, right? And so they hadn't even finished high school. So I went to the dean, and so in order to get to, in college, you had to take a placement exam, which is an exam to test your English, and there's another placement, if you want, you can do a math placement exam. So they did the English one, my older one did the English one, and he scored in his 90s, really high. You know? And so the dean got to see that, and then we had a few other things, articles and all he had written that we showed him. And he said, okay, well, my concern is that he's very young, and he's not going to be emotionally mature to handle such older children and all that. But he gave in, and he said, if the class teacher agrees to having him in class, then it's okay. So we went to the class teacher, an English class teacher. Anyway, first we found out that it was too late in the semester, so all the classes were full. The 101 classes were full, the 102 classes were full, and this Dr. Sani kept pushing us. He says, okay, try for the honors class. And that was full. The first year honors class was not available that year. And then he said, okay, try for the second year. I said, what, second year? Anyway, it had some seats. And so my son in this book, this pink book, he writes in that. You know, there's a section where I write and then he writes. I write and then he writes about his experience. So, and he talks about his experience, you know, of how he felt walking into a classroom and looking at the syllabus. First of all, children being so much older than him, 6 or 7 years older than him, and looking at the syllabus, which had books like Shakespeare's Hamlet, Homer's Odyssey, and so many other classical writers. And he's thinking, he had never read that. He was brought up on Srimad Bhagavatam, and we used to also read Chaitanya Charitamrita and all that. So he's thinking, but then when the first assignment started coming in, he was just like, okay, it's not so difficult because it was all, for example, there were, Shakespeare had, was talking about reincarnation and his views on the world and stuff like that, which he could, studying Srimad Bhagavatam, that's not a problem, right? And then the Homer's Odyssey and other Greek writers, there were some stories about big banquets and feasts, and he could totally relate with that. Chaitanya Charitamrita is all about Lord Chaitanya having these big feasts for devotees, right? Big banquets. So in other words, he found it okay and interesting. However, the interesting thing is that the teacher told me that while the other kids were writing the storyline and the plot line, this is happening and then this is happening, this kid was digging in deeper and deeper into what is actually happening. What are Shakespeare's views? Okay, and that came from the training from Srimad Bhagavatam, and she was very pleased, and she gave him a straight A. So you see, Srimad Bhagavatam is teaching us also the skills that in schools today, they're teaching the skills of how to do abstract thinking and things like that. those skills are very well given in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay, so the skills he learned from Srimad Bhagavatam, but the skills could be applied in books like Shakespeare and other books, right? It came in handy. Right? So in other words, so what my experience was that in 5 to 6 years he had, because at that point when he got admitted, the door was open for him to take other courses, right? So he started taking a few courses here and there, right? Geography, sociology, anthropology, because he was young, right? And plus he needed these core subjects to get his degree. There's a certain level of core subjects you need, right? And the amazing thing is that these subjects he had never done, right? But all this, because it was covered in the Vedic perspective, by the Vedic perspective is covered in the Srimad Bhagavatam, it was not difficult for him. You know, there's all these subjects of anthropology, the origin of man, origin of life. It's covered in Srimad Bhagavatam, right? The creation and all that. So when you're doing it from the Vedic perspective and you have to do it from the mundane perspective, it's not very difficult, right? So sociology, anthropology, all these subjects were already covered in Srimad Bhagavatam. History. Srimad Bhagavatam is all about history. It's not a chronological history, but it's all history of the great personalities that is relevant for us to go back to Godhead. So all the skills were there, all the subject matter was there from the Vedic perspective, right? And the good thing is that when you study these subjects from the Vedic perspective, then you're not going to be misled by things out there. You know, you take philosophy, most of it is personalistic, atheistic, right? You do be influenced by that. Nobody is going to, you're never going to end up with blind thinking. You take a mundane subject, you're going to think about it. Because you've learned the skills and you've taken the Vedic perspective, so anything that you take from the mundane world, you're going to have a perspective. You're going to think about it. So you can go through life becoming a scientist, becoming a lawyer, but you're still going to remain a wonderful devotee. And you're going to have so much motivation. People were wondering that a life steeped in Srimad Bhagavatam and Srila Prabhupada's books, is that preparing them for life of just being a preacher, of being a pujari or a preacher? Is that what they're aimed at? Is that what they're being trained at? No. So much of our books, of Srila Prabhupada's books, is all about the nature of this material world and how to live in it while preparing to go back to Godhead. Right? So this is a wonderful credit to Srila Prabhupada's books, that no matter, if you want to become a lawyer in America, one of the prerequisites that they want is a degree in philosophy. Can you believe it? To become a lawyer, they prefer a degree in philosophy. Not because of the content, philosophical content, but about the skills, because of the skills required in reaching philosophical solutions. Imagine a child reading Srimad Bhagavatam, what kind of lawyer is he going to be? Can you imagine? It's all about deep thinking, one point leading to another point. So anything, if he wants to become a scientist or anything, and people say, oh, what kind of motivation is he going to have for these mundane things? But he has to live like a grahastha, hold a responsibility, carry a responsibility. Our experience has been the motivation becomes 10 times as much. Because you know the purpose of life. You know the purpose of life. You're going to do everything. The motivation factor, the devotional life is so motivating. You know you're doing this to please Krishna. One day you're going to use this in the service of the Lord. There's more motivation for a child growing up as a Krishna conscious devotee if it's done right. So this is my little take on this thing, that there is no loss in any way. Huh? Okay, let's go to our next point, and that is spiritual benefits. we already talked a little bit about the character, but really, I mean, this is the type of association that children get from these great examples. They go very, very deep, very deep, very deep. The example of Parikshit Maharaj, he wasn't an ordinary person, right? The humility, of course, of him accepting the curse was there, right? But yet, he was, humility does not mean that he was not a successful leader, right? Sometimes we think of humility in terms of being a coward. But look at how he dealt with Kali, how he managed the kingdom. Very, very nice. Understood the reason why he took that curse so nicely is because he understood the plan of the Lord, right? The current of time. He doesn't want to go over it. He was so aware of other people's feelings, When he wanted to go and apologize to Shamik Rishi for throwing that dead snake around his neck, he didn't go because he was worried about how Shamik Rishi is going to be embarrassing for him. He was thinking about other people's feelings, even though he was going to die in 7 days. Just little things. When you read Srila Prabhupada's prophets, you pick up so many wonderful things. The story of Prahlad, right? All about the nature of this material world. Prabhupada said there's only one. At that time, there was only one Hiranyakashipu. Now there's hundreds, right? How do you live in a world full of these self-serving people? How do you live in it? Our children have so much hope because there's a solution for everything. You can imagine the children out there who don't have this advantage, right? And that's why you see so many problems. People taking to drugs and this and that because they don't have a solution. Our books, Srila Prabhupada's books, are giving a solution. They're giving examples of people like Hiranyakashipu, but they're also giving the solution to that. How Prahlad lived, He was living like a tongue between the teeth, right? So anyway, so many lessons I can go on and on and on. There's so many things, right? So the children take up the character of these personalities. Anyway, so this is the academic benefits, critical thinking skills. In other words, we know that the purpose of Srimad Bhagavatam is to go back to Godhead, right? But this comes as a side benefit, and it comes very strongly. Today, employers are not looking for how many marks you have in high school or college. What they're looking for is skills like this, critical thinking skills. Even educational institutes, they're looking for skills like that. Then they present, you go for interview, they present problems to you of that nature. They're judging how you can take a problem and find a creative solution for it. So all this is given very nicely. And then the methodology of how to teach Srimad Bhagavatam. So here we can do different ways, but the one that I tried was reading Srila Prabhupada's books, only the translations with our children, taking turns reading that, and then opening for discussion. The reason why they don't read the purports is because it gets too long for them. So children are young and they need to keep moving. But if the teacher or the parent studies the purport themselves ahead of time, then they can, in the form of discussion, they bring the points. Not for every purport. It just, like Bhagavatam will be taught in layers. You can't give all at once. Even 20 years from now, you're going to find newer and newer meanings for that same story that you read again and again and again, right? Krishna told Arjuna that he didn't want to fight. He said, no, you have to fight, right? And that same instruction later on, for him, it meant that he needs to give up everything. When he heard that Krishna had left and he was devastated, then he started thinking about the knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita that Krishna had given. And the same instructions, he understood it as for himself, that he should now leave everything and go away, go to the forest. You see? So those same instructions have different meanings at different times in our life. As a grahastha is going to speak differently to us, you see. So Srimad Bhagavatam speaks at different levels for different people. For a child, it's going to speak differently, right? So again, one of the things that the teacher, remember when he went to college early, was the maturity, emotional maturity. I mean, Srimad Bhagavatam covers every psychological situation in the world. Any psychological situation in the world is in the Srimad Bhagavatam. If one studies, one can understand any situation. And that's why they didn't have any emotional problems. Emotionally, children mature way faster than other kids. But they still retain their simple innocence, you see. And therefore, we see, because so many characters are there. Suniti, different psychology. Suruchi, different psychology, right? Daksha, different psychology, right? So many different types of people with different psychologies, right? You become an expert on people, and how they react and how they, why they think the way they think there. And that's a huge problem in society, right? Understanding, we're not empathetic or understanding for other people, right? So all that is given so nicely. And so by bringing to our children in the form of discussion, children open up. Because it's spiritual subject matter, the matter is spiritual, not material. It just acts, there's so much potency, the way it acts. Children who've clamped down, there is no question of clamping down. There is no question of, generation gap. Because the stories will bring out that. We don't need to point fingers at the child. See, Dhruva is like that now, look at you. That's the worst thing we can do, right? The stories themselves speak it. Dhruva in his dilemma, what he's going through, right? It will speak out on its own. And then the children will get the picture. There was one little child, the mother was telling that the other children were being mean to her, and she was coming and telling their mother, but I'm not going to retaliate. See, remember Dhruva's story? Suniti told her son, don't be envious of others. Don't hate others. Because it's going to come back to you. Please, go to Krsna. And she's telling her mother that, yeah, the little Balaram, that little boy who was saying yesterday, oh, this little kid, my friend said this, and he said, but I didn't react. So that's how our children are. I mean, what we are giving our children is so sophisticated. I mean, who in the world out there knows the difference between body and soul? You talk about them, boy, this is profound, man. That's how they say. But for our children, it's like nothing. They've already read all this philosophy, right? It's not ordinary, right? What we have, what Prabhupada has given us is not ordinary. So anyway, and then of course the reflection time comes. And that is the best time, the most rewarding time. I guarantee you, when teachers and parents read Srimad Bhagavatam with their children, the realizations will be the same. That's what I experienced. It's going to be the same. Because we're speaking to the soul. We're not speaking to the body. That's why you see Prahlad, even when he was a child, he was hearing in the womb. And he became self-realized, right? So this is the nature of spiritual subject matter. So when they speak and their realization, I mean, that's where you realize, wow. I mean, and these children, they're not going to make foolish mistakes. Krishna has taken birth in their hearts, right? So all this is going on. Of course, for the benefit, as I started giving seminars many years ago, then people started saying, well, you know, I don't know if I can do it. So we started compiling these books, writing these books, which is like a book per canto, which is a systematic study, chapter by chapter, of every canto. Okay, 7 cantos we've done, right? So it's a systematic study, which means that all the work has been done. You know, there's a team of people that are working on creating resources for every chapter. The idea is to bring the philosophy, you know, of the Bhagavatam to the children in a way that's child-friendly. So in other words, by doing these activities, the children are able to grasp the philosophy just like we grasp. Okay. So there's a summary of the story, then there's higher thinking questions, the discussion questions that I just talked about, and then multiple choice questions, and then there's also, you know, activities such as analogy activities. You know, there's so many analogies and introspective activities, critical thinking activities. Then there's also theater, drama, sometimes. Then there's also crossword puzzles. So then there's art activities. There's a lot of activities per chapter, but you can pick and choose. The idea was to give a whole variety, you know. For example, Canto 1, Chapter 1 is highly philosophical, right? At least part of it, right? But the way we've done it, it becomes very, very interesting, and the child is able to grasp it. You have mind maps and things like that. You know. So there's a lot of work that's gone into years and years of work. And we're still continuing by Krishna's grace. So that's available for you if you like. There's a whole set because, you know, I get a publisher discount, so I get half the price, literally less, you know, half the price than what you get from Amazon. So you're welcome to get a whole set if you like. But I just brought, we have just 2 sets that we can do. They're just for display. If you order it, we can get it for you. So it's like 140 Canadian, 145 Canadian dollars. Okay. So you're welcome to have that. Okay. So here's some other things. Again, science, so very important. Yeah, all the sciences become mechanistic, atheistic. What is the purpose of science today? Is to prove that in that creation, that there's no God, right? Basically, there's no God. And our Bhagavatam disputes that, refutes that, and gives us the other picture, which is so convincing. I mean, creation is described in Canto 1, 2, 3, you know, so much in different perspectives. Nobody can make up that. It's real and it's very convincing. And Srila Prabhupada in the purpose refutes every theory in different purpose at different times. The Big Bang theory, the chemical evolution theory. He says, we didn't come from chemicals. Chemicals came from life. Because people say, you know, we can create life by chemical reactions in cells. And he gives such convincing arguments, you know. Do you see that citric acid came from a lemon tree, from life? From a body, there's all chemicals coming out because we have life there. And if children learn that, how can anybody brainwash them, right? And same thing with Big Bang. He goes on and on. The Darwin theory, he really refutes that again and again. Low intelligence comes from higher intelligence, not the other way around. Because the cause must have all the qualities that the effect has, he says. Right? For us, it's the opposite, right? We talk about evolution of consciousness, not that man came from monkeys, right? I mean, no genes can be copied in a way where a whole new species can be created. There's no evidence of gene mutation where a whole species comes out. And Prabhupada says that you can have a red rose bush and sometimes you may see a white rose in that, but you'll never see lotus flowers there. Right? You don't see lotus flowers there. Man can be born with 6 fingers, he says, but he can never be born with hoofs. Hoofs, right? So like that, he defeats everything. It is so important for children to read Srimad Bhagavatam. They can never be fooled or misled. And even if they go to become big scientists, they will be different. They will be very special. Prabhupada has given us so much. For us, for our children, we need to utilize that. And they will become the best, they will be successful both materially, also materially. I mean, it's impossible. It's impossible for a devotee to be foolish. Impossible. So there's adult topics also in the Srimad Bhagavatam. People question. If children are going to pick up these topics about sex and violence all from out there, internet, their peers, better they learn from Srimad Bhagavatam. Because this is a wonderful thing, because I've read every part. People ask me, did you read this part? Do you read this part? Yes, because the Bhagavatam is transcendental. Anything you read, how can it be detrimental? Bhagavatam gives both perspective. When sex is utilized for sense gratification, this is the result. When it's done to please Krishna, this is the result. To raise wonderful children, right? And so many wonderful examples in our scriptures. Kardamuni Devi story. The principles are there. Nobody can be Kardamuni today or Devi, but the principles are there, right? The story of Kashyapa Muni and all these Daksha creating wonderful progeny, right? And then there are examples of when sex is used for sense gratification, for wrong purposes, right? We have wonderful examples for that also. The story of Diti and the birth of Hiranyakashipu, the story of Puranjan. We know the results of this Puranjan story. A lot of descriptions of lustful relationship. But the child is also seeing what is the result of that. Both Puranjan and his wife suffer a lot. Old age, suffering, time and all that. Okay. So a child reading Srimad Bhagavatam is not going to be misled. Will understand that yes, I mean in today's society you can't avoid association with the opposites, for girls to avoid boys and all that. But they will know the difference, what it means to be, to be somebody like casual friends at school versus intimate association, right? There's a huge difference. My older son, when he went to Oxford, somebody asked him that, how do you avoid the beautiful girls there, And he's, because young people, it's not easy, right? So he said that, well, there was any question like that, he would wonder, he would always ask himself, is she going to be my future wife? And if the answer was no, okay, no. Because there may be situations where there's, push, proposal or some attraction or, or somebody is pushing or whatever. And so anyway, this comes to the study of Srimad Bhagavatam. You learn. Because the nature of this material, it's very natural for the male to be attracted to the female. It's a very natural thing, right? But Bhagavatam teaches how to use that attraction in service of Krishna in the proper way. It doesn't view negatively. It gives us the tools of how to use it to please Krishna. And that's the wonderful thing of helping our children understand the relationship, what is the relationship between man and woman as they go out into the world, right? And that's a very important thing, because now parents are, it's just like, somebody was telling me in London, even among devotee families, boys are bringing girls home and staying with them and have their own apartment. And these are devotee parents and there's nothing they can do, right? Yeah, it's happening among our children, among our families. It's not like we become very conservative or old-fashioned or something like that. Even Devahuti, she had a choice. she had a choice to marry Krsna Muni. It's not like choices are bad. But then if the proper training is given, then the choices would be good, and also it would be. So at least the devotees, if they're trained well, they may fall down still in spite of that, right? But at least the fall down may be in the mode of goodness rather than mode of flat in ignorance, right? There's a difference. Better that you don't have those scars, they don't have them at all. But it's not going to be as bad as not giving them. That's why Shastra is so very important. Anyway, this can be started very quickly now. This can be started very early in their life when they're little toddlers, looking at pictures, they cannot read and stuff. But that's really important, you know. Remember that anything they do in relationship with Krishna consciousness, whether they're playing Krishna conscious games, even playing Krishna conscious games is so nice, is so very important. We don't think much of it. Now we give them all kinds of, you know, artificial toys that agitate the mind and stuff like that, right? But in the Vedic model, they always give this nice and peaceful toys. Right? So anyway, or even, you know. So in other words, these are very important. Why? Because the personalities are absolute. When they associate, Prabhupada said when they play Krishna conscious games, you know, pretending one is a cow, one is a demon, or going out in the forest, they actually become Krishna conscious. They actually become Krishna conscious. Okay, so this is that, and then this is a very nice age to teach Krishna consciousness. You know, they may not be able to read, but they are so, you know, so they can absorb so many things. You'll be surprised. There was one boy, 4.5 years old. I was doing this Dhruva story with him, and there was this part where the Viman comes, you know, the airplane comes. Very beautiful description of the airplane, and also of Nanda and Sunanda sitting in the airplane, who had come to take Dhruva back to Godhead, right? And so this boy is listening, and he's saying, I want to go back. I want to sit in that plane. I want to go back to Godhead. I want to sit in the plane. So I said, okay, maybe one day you can. You know, you're such a nice devotee, and keep on like this, and one day you can. And then we started reading again. And then he said, no, but I want to go right now. I want to go. He's only 4.5, right? I need some water, please. So he says, no, I want to go right now. Can I go right now? Then I started thinking, what should I tell him? And then I said, okay, you can go, but remember your parents cannot go. Is that okay? You can go, but your parents cannot go. So he started thinking, and then he said, you know what? I think I'm going to wait. He started after a little thought. I don't want to make the same mistake as Ajamil did. Very profound. He said he was going to wait because he didn't want to make the same mistake as Ajamil did. Anybody caught it? Everybody caught it, right? When Ajamil fell down with the prostitute, and then he got his senses, he realized what he did, and remember all that story? And then the first thing is he was lamenting for his old parents, that he had neglected them. And then he also lamented for his chaste wife, whom he had left. He was lamenting. He remembered that detail. He says, if I go back to Godhead, what will happen to my parents? I will be neglecting like Ajamil did. Very profound, isn't it? And this story was done a long time ago. And I've noticed that among this age group in our other children also. Like how they can take two stories and put it together. It's really amazing. And the more you do Srimad Bhagavatam with them, the more those skills become better. They're able to go deeper. The more you do, to the extent that you think is the most boring part, the prayers and stuff. You know, prayers of the demigod, prayers of so-and-so, right? You think children will be bored. They want to read it. They're excited about that. They're excited about when Prabhupada refused the Mayavadi and fights with him. Refutes him. They say, oh, let's be a Mayavadi. You know, that's how they speak, you know. Even though they may not understand everything, right? But the enthusiasm is like that. So there's no small age, you know. So there were other children also that age who did a lot of amazing things. Anyway, so this is the same. You just go deeper and deeper and deeper. Very, very wonderful topics. So much can be said about. Like we were doing the Jai Vijay story, and it was just amazing. How many issues come there. Who's right? I mean, the sage is right, Jai Vijay right. Who's right? You have to think. Jai Vijay, they did it because, they were trying to protect, them from, because they didn't think they were qualified. But were they so angry? Was this good anger, bad anger? Were they supposed to lose their temper like that? They were cursed, right? So many things. Even when Jai Vijay were cursed, they didn't revert the curse, right? They didn't retaliate. They were praying to them, please let me always remember the Lord. So many things, right? So in this way, so many issues are there. So there's many examples. Dhruva story is a wonderful story for children, where we can learn so much about Suniti, a glorious mother. I tell you, you read about Suniti, you really want to be a mother like her. So simple-hearted, but yet so, so much without envy and all that, right? And even though she was neglected by her husband, she became so glorious. So you can see chastity. She was so chaste to Krishna, right? So Krishna protected her because she never forgot the Lord. She gave him the right path of always remembering to going and seeking the Lord, right? She could have done so many things, but she gave him. She was so faithful to Krishna. Anyway, so this is all. We're finished now with this. So this is the second part. Should we take questions? Is there any time? Because the third part is going to be just 5 minutes. Has any questions? Yes.
Mataji, you told, I'm just taking examples from Srimad Bhagavatam. You spoke about the Big Bang Theory. And in the outside world, that's the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
But when kids have to go outside, like, I'm not taking example of home, like, my kids go out and to school. Then they have to do their studies according to that curriculum. The answers which they will write will be correct when they write what they mean is right.
Yeah, they should write whatever is needed.
Okay.
Obviously.
Yeah.
They even won't be able to stand there and argue with the teacher. You know what? This is all nonsense.
That's what I'm trying to understand, like what their conduct should be.
Yeah, because they're learning another. See, this is a very later on they can become good preachers, right?
Yeah.
Because you've understood what the world says out there about life, where it originated, whether life came from life or matter or whatever. So you're learning all those arguments. You're becoming expert, but you're also learning the Vedic arguments. You see, so you can utilize that to become powerful preachers. You see, and the child who's been trained in Srimad Bhagavatam is not going to have a problem writing those answers. By the way, it's not like, okay, I'm a devotee, and no, he's very mature. That's what Bhagavatam gives, a lot of maturity to understand. There's so many different types of people. World is not black and white, is it? No, there's so many shades of gray. So he learns how to negotiate those differences. That's why you see he's able to see people over there, not devotees, and still accept them with compassion. Because he knows that the world is got different types of people, and each one is trying to serve, whether you're serving Krishna's energy, material energy, or spiritual energy, right? He has a compassionate view of the world, right? That's what he's giving, is that maturity. So he's able to take these, all these bogus philosophy also, and understand that, people are covered over by material energy. They're being enamored and mesmerized by this, material world, with these physical laws. Okay? and what goes with it, gives you a very deep perspective about life, not a shallow one, not a fanatic one. Okay, he's demonizing the whole world, you versus me, holier than thou. No, that's not what Bhagavatam is. Because you see, Bhagavatam is all about fall downs. So many personalities fall down. But how they pick themselves up, that's the real story. It's not strange to fall down in this material world, right?
Thank you. Thank you. This reminder of the story is true. It's just, inspiring if you just hear it. Everybody falls down, and then it's not that. It's what you do to pick yourself up. So that's like, again, going deeper in somebody else's children. My question is just kind of technical, because in that first slide I saw, you read, then you discuss, then you reflect, and then summarize. And I'm just wondering what this difference is, and there was nice examples of the older, the 8 to 15, about questions of why and how.
Yes.
So what's that difference between the discussing and reflecting?
Okay. Yeah. So when you're discussing, you're taking a point from somewhere, from a purport or something. You're discussing, and for example, you see, any story, the Dhruva story, for example. You're discussing how Dhruva is coming, and and Suniti is giving good advice and all that. So you're discussing, right? Because there's so many ways Dhruva could have acted, or Suniti could have acted, right? But he opts to act in a certain way due to the good counsel of Suniti, right? So, so you're discussing. That's called discussion. Reflecting is when you take the whole picture and you reflect, where you're thinking that, one should not be envious with others. Envy is something so bad, And taking, Suniti's example of how even when she was going on the palanquin with her co-wives, she was sitting on the same palanquin. When Dhruva came finally back home and everybody had gone to see him, meet him, the queens were in their own palanquins and all that. And it said that Suniti made a point to sit in the palanquin of Surichi to show the world that everything's okay. Imagine she was going as a glorious mother, a hero's mother, because Dhruva has come home and she's been validated, right? After all the mistreatment by the king and all those things, she's been validated. She could go like a proud mother. Look at you, Suruchi, what kind of stepmother you've been. Look at what you did to my son and blah, blah. But she opts to go with him, right? So these things are to be reflected, how wonderful somebody could be, in terms of, giving up envy and showing by example her, when we are without envy and we are showing a good example, it has a great effect on the child, right? So Dhruva is being affected by all that.
Almost like what's happening, you're discussing like what's taking place, and then that reflection is that more like
extracting the essence, yeah. Your own realizations and also what you feel about the whole thing. How has it affected you? How has this story affected you in your own life? How do you apply that in your life? Okay.
Going back to the story when one of your kid was getting into college and he was forced to take the drink from other friends, and you shared that it's not your love that told him to stick to the regular devotion, but the connection that he had with his spiritual master. So, I want to know, as a mother, how did you reacted when you heard that, hey, I spent so much holy to the principal, but it's spiritual master. So, if
this is absolutely. I was really happy to hear that. It kind of validated that how important it is to get a child initiated before they go to college. Before they go to college, please, have them chant 16 rounds and take shelter of a guru, because it's such an important shelter. It's such a big shelter. Our love can be so much on the bodily platform. We have so much attachment, and that was the whole purpose of Gurukula, because people understood, the acharyas understood that there's so much attachment there. So you need somebody who's like that, but an ideal teacher, but yet not so much involved in physical attachment. And that was the whole purpose, of Zen. And you see that model was there, Gurukula. Of course, now it's in Kali Yuga, not we have a few left, and they don't work. So many parents, for many children it doesn't work anymore. But it's there. There's some Gurukulas there. But you see in the model of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, how he did not send his children to school. All his 9 children, he taught himself. This is a side point. But you see, Bhaktivinoda Thakur taught his own children at home. He did not send them to Gurukula, unlike the earlier model. But he made sure that Bhaktisiddhanta took shelter of Gaur Kishore Das Bahadur. That was his success. You see, so taking shelter of Guru is the culmination of our good parenting. This is our success in good parenting, when we see children take shelter of spiritual master, because that's the pathway back to Godhead. I felt very good. You see, because our role is so very big, like Suniti's role. Ultimately, he took shelter of Narad Muni, right? But without her, how was it possible? She was the one who gave him the first lessons. Right? The Pad Padaksha Guru was Suniti. And Prabhupada writes in one purpose, she could not do austerity so much, right? But yet she went back to God. And then he's praying, Prabhupada saying that maybe one disciple of mine will take me back to God. Prabhupada is writing. Right? Imagine, he's such a big guru, yet he's thinking like that, right? See, it's our success, it's our glory when we see children ultimately take shelter of Guru. And that's what I talked about, is this divine power. I mean, we are devotees and we are very crucial to the child. But the divine power means Krishna and his pure devotees. This is what saves the child, and that's why it's so important among all our duties, like Rishabh Dev says, is to give them, make sure that they go back to Godhead as far as possible, whatever we can do. Yes.
So you're talking about sadhana for children, and usually you want to make Krishna consciousness fun for the kids so they stay inclined towards it. But sometimes you see there's that pressure, or you want them to chant their own. So how do you balance that? How do you give them some sadhana and not scare them away?
Prabhu, thank you for bringing that up. It's such an important point. Because this is what happens, most children, they hate japa, they don't like to chant japa, it's because something has gone wrong there, So Prabhupada said it should be presented the joys of Krishna consciousness. The children, because he says that relationship with Krishna is voluntary. You cannot push it down their throat, right? They have to be attracted. So it has to be presented in a very positive and joyful way. And that's the most important part. We sing and we dance with them. So that comes, the morning program. It's all about dancing, chanting, having fun, right? I mean, when I see a little child, I'm jumping. Now I can't jump, but like jumping with them and doing all kinds of things. I was here in Brampton in a family's home. The little girl, she's only like 5 years old. She just refused to come for the morning program. They have a morning program there before they go to school. She refused to come. And then I said, come on, let's go. And I started jumping and having fun over there. Just jumping and dancing. And she was like, she came the next day and the next day, So, I mean, children, they are children, you have to, they are approaching Krishna in a different way. They're taking shelter for Krishna in a different way than the adults. But yet the shelter is there. Just like the cowherd boys, right? So we present them in a very joyful way, okay? And regarding japa, we don't push them on that. We don't. And Prabhupada gave very nice instructions on that. He said japa should not be used as a punishment or as a reward. For example, you've been bad today. Now chant one round. Go and chant one round. I mean, there are parents who do it. There are parents actually who do that. Because they're so ambitious. My child should be chanting 6 rounds. Yeah, but then how is it presented, right? There's ways to do it. You chant, and one way is to chant with them. Because when you sit down and chant with them, then they feel better. And I used to chant with them, and then I tell them that Krishna is dancing on your tongue, or something like that, right? And another way is to make get-togethers. Every Ekadashi, all the devotees would get together and do rounds together, including the children. So they would think this is really fun because their friends were there and we were all chanting together. So you can make something like that. You can try something else, like where collectively we're chanting. Then another thing we introduced there is that on New Year's Eve we did a japathon, wherein we chanted one name for one citizen of Idaho or something like that. So there would be that many million, and all of us would, and the children would get, and we would have a chart, and they would get so excited. Some of them were chanting like 64 rounds, kids, because, I'm getting them. Then later on we made the announcement and who did what. Really inspiring for the kids, because that was the purpose. We're chanting for every citizen in Idaho, Okay. So think of creative ways, how to make it positive, how to make it attractive, and not a negative experience, right? That's so important. So Krishna consciousness should be presented. You have to see it from the child's perspective, I was saying how you need to be there's so many things Prabhupada has given us. Think creatively what you can do. When evening comes around, children like to be active, happy, like that. Okay, so much can say. Yes.
So, regarding japa, like the way we don't miss our morning program, should we keep that also on track? Like japa also we don't miss, or it's okay?
Well, again, remember, not as a punishment. Okay, so if he's happy to do it, if he has time before he goes to school, right? Then it's very nice. I know one boy in New Jersey, he does it, But if it's possible, if you can manage, I think just because here the whole mood is different. It's a different type of school and everything, right? So you may be able to manage that, and it's really nice to do rounds in the morning. Yeah. Okay, and he'll be more inspired because many children, they're dragging their japa because they're not doing it in the morning, and come afternoon and evening they're tired. Some other modes have taken over. It's very hard for them. So chanting in the morning is good. Yeah.
So when a child do japa, can we give them reward? Like if they do 1 round and we give them like their favorite food or 10 minutes more to play?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a good thing like connecting japa to that something material, but it's better than punishment. Then like you could give, like some parents say, okay, you chant 6 rounds today, I'll give you an ice cream or something, right? So it's like a sticker is okay, like a little sticker. Yeah, it's okay to get them, to encourage them, and once they become more stable, then you stop it like that. So it's a big thing, right? Japa is like. Anyway, so here's the last one. I've spoken some of it already, quite a bit. So there's so many things you can do. Again, we don't, we want our children to be out there, but in the context of Krishna consciousness. That is the difference. People say, they have the argument that they need to experience what's there, because how will they learn? How will they fend for themselves when time comes. Well, you can't escape material nature. It's all over the place. Whether you are trying to, if you're trying to experience, the thing is, they start experiencing depravity. And you don't want them to see that, There's no need for that. So let them experience that, but in the context of Krishna consciousness. They don't become wiser by experiencing all the stuff that goes on there. Prahlad didn't need to experience it. How was he doing it? Through Shruti, through the process of hearing. The realization he had, the verses that he speaks about, material life, the nature of family life and all that, right? So how did he get that? Just through hearing. So by the process of hearing from the Shastras, the child sees it all. This is transcendental. It's not a material thing that they're hearing. It's a transcendental subject matter. It's a much better process than actually experiencing it. But you can't keep them closed in a room. So they go out there, but they experience it in a different way, by sharing Krishna with others. And that increases their faith. It solidifies their faith, right? So we were doing even prison programs once a month. Going to jail. Which child is going to get an opportunity in public school to go to jail, right? First of all, he's never going to ever commit a crime, right? But then secondly, he develops a sense of compassion. I remember the times when we went there, it was so moving. I see these criminals and everything taking the holy name. You really see Lord Chaitanya descend there. You come back with, wow. This process is so wonderful. It can even affect, and they become devotees. You know that? They have a prison ministry in ISKCON. There are serious devotees who come out of there, who completely change their life. Again, that faith builder, we see that how powerful this Krishna consciousness is. So you can't do it alone. Get together with families, try different things. School programs also when we're going. We started out with small, like kindergartens and even nurseries and all that. But then as they got older, we went with the elementary school, secondary school. And this way, and when we went there, it was so interesting, because not everybody is open-minded, right? But the thing is that when you go there to present Krishna consciousness, it's so attractive, right? The people tend to, people that you expect that they're going to be very inimical, they end up being very nice, very receptive. And very soon you find questions coming from this way, that way. So many questions come. Many times you would think, okay, we speak more on the culture and this is a tough place. And we ended up speaking more about Krishna consciousness. And all you have to do is just simple things like karma, reincarnation. Why is this cow? Because they're going to end up asking, so why is the cow sacred? What's that? Right? So so just simple things like that you can speak about. A lifestyle. That's why the kids really love it. They stand up and they describe what they're wearing, the dhoti, the tilak. So that's where they get to speak, right? And what does it do to them? Oh, this is really nice. We can go to a devotee school with tilak, but to be appreciated in a non-devotee school, that's a faith builder, a real faith builder, right? And then the kirtan, and by the time time for chanting comes, everybody is just like warmed up, right? And what is like really happy, pleased that you came, and so overwhelmed and so happy, right? When my kid, then we went to a high school. We used to also go for high schools as they got older. My first time my son spoke, he was 12 years old. I told him, it's time for you to now try it. And he went to this high school class. And I tell you, he was so nervous. It was his first speaking engagement. His hands were shaking, his legs were shaking. Like he was a real mess.
he thought the whole world can see his hands and legs shaking, but obviously he cannot see that, right? And then he started speaking about just basic Sanatan Dharma, karma, reincarnation, and all that. And all the kids were there, the high school kids were there. And then came time for chanting, and everybody was clapping and dancing and all that. And then later on, when it had finished, he said, "Oh, I did terribly." I said, "No, you did so well." Anyway, and my younger son was playing the harmonium for the chanting and all that. So one time, we used to go every semester. They would invite us. They liked us, and it was a Christian school, high school. And one semester, I told this Christian teacher who was inviting us, I said, "This time I'm going to bring a devotee, an older person, to do this." And she was adamant. "No, the beauty of your religion is when your youth speaks this. The beauty of your religion is when your youth explains all this." She wanted a Christian youth to. And she kept books, Prabhupada's books in her library. And finally she started coming to the temple. She said, "I just bring them there." And then she started participating in the events. And when it came time for chanting, she would be the first one to start singing. Like, we do this trick where when you sing and then you have people from the audience sing the chanting, right? And in order to encourage the students, she would start singing first. Really amazing. So this is how Krishna consciousness is. I mean, they really like young people. They want to see children, act out like that. That's more attractive to them, right? And you can imagine how much it does to the children. Because the kids were so excited, the high school kids in that school, they would skip their own classes and come for this class when they found out that we were coming. So for this one classroom, in this teacher's classroom, all the rest of the school would come. So it can be done, it can be done. And so these programs are very good. And then, of course, when they get older, they can go to college and they can speak over there. Right? In whatever capacity you can do, whether it's speaking here in the temple, but going out there has its own value. Going out there, the child growing up giving Krishna to others is never going to be closed-minded or will have a very universal picture of the world while becoming strong in his own Krishna consciousness. That's the point. So anyway, and what to speak of public speaking, marketing, debate, and all these things, all comes when we share Krishna with others. We don't have to go and take a university course on how to public speak. We don't have to learn debate and all that. It's full. Bhagavatam is full with that. You do interfaith services, then we started doing interfaith. And there's other religions, and you learn how to speak out. You see the commonality of all religions while speaking your own philosophy, right? So all these things within the Prabhupada movement, within Krishna consciousness, everything is there. Whatever Prabhupada has given us, it makes to be a wholesome kid. We don't need anything else. We don't need to. It's there. First, let's try this out. Harinam, book distribution. We used to go on this downtown area where every Saturday all the people would come, bring their shops outside, their restaurants outside. It's a perfect place to do Harinam, right? Where people can, and kids going out on Harinam, they can see, right? I'm sure you have it here also, right? They become bold and they become so happy and bold, right? So that's very good. And then distributing books out there while the Harinam is going on, it becomes very effective because they're hearing the holy name as well, right? So all these memories they stay in the heart of the child growing up. And even if he's going through struggles later on in life and some distraction and things like that, these things never fail you. They never fail you. Come back to it. This culture of Krishna consciousness. That's why Prabhupada gave us not just our sadhana festivals, Harinam and all these things.
It's very important to participate and bring our children for this, to experience this culture. Right? Okay, I think we should stop. What time is it? I'm not...
5 minutes.
Oh, it's perfect?
Yes.
7? Oh, what time was it supposed to end? Oh, 7. Okay, fine, it's okay. I thought, oh, it's probably like 9 or something. Okay, let me do that. Very important. So many things they're learning through festivals, right? Prabhupada was so keen on celebrating festivals. You know that? The Rath Yatras that he established. It's said that one time he was so tired. He was organizing this Mayapur festival. And somebody said, Prabhupada, you're so tired. Why don't you take rest? He says, rest? What? When you're preaching, you're always inspired. Anyways, Prabhupada was very much keen about Rath Yatras and festivals. So this is, when you go on vacation, that's the next one. When you go on vacation, think of things like that. Go for Brajmanda, okay? This is a lifetime, amazing experience. My sons would call it the transcendental boot camp. You're walking like 20 kilometers a day, right? Sleeping in tents with a bucket of water to manage your hygiene, you know? It's just amazing. One time we were in this Brajmandal, Hanuman Preshak Swami was there, and he had taken this bucket of water, and he turned around to do something, and a cow drank up all his water. It was so cute, the whole thing. So you get experiences like that, which you can't get anywhere. Sleeping in tents, you know, going from one place to another, hearing Krishna Katha, and all these great devotees would come and give you Krishna Katha, right? Getting up in the morning, taking cold shower, you realize that how life is so simple. You just need a little place to sleep and simple. You know, life can be so. And Krishna book comes alive. You read Krishna book and then you actually see it happening there. It's just a very powerful. And every night they would do the whole place. They would do impromptu dramas. Right at the moment, they would just come and do some drama or something. And then what to speak of jumping into the kundas and swimming across the kundas, you know? It was one of those amazing experiences for children. And walking and, you know, on the soft dust sometimes and all that. You know, so these are our vacations. These are the things we should be looking out to give our experience to our children. Take a semester off and see if you can do it, you know. For us, it was never a problem because you could go anytime, right? Yeah, it wasn't like school time or anything like that. And then if you cannot do Braj Mandal, I would highly recommend that. You know? And then organize tours by sannyasis. Now you have sannyasis doing 1 week in Vrindavan, you know, what do you call them? Retreats or something, right? Radhanath Swami does that. All the Swamis practically do that. And you just join up with them and experience that with the children. It's more organized, it's less hard on the body, right? Everything is provided for, the food is provided for, the transportation is provided for. Even Braj Mandal is provided for, but it's still more harsh, more austere, right? And yeah, so you can do that, and that's more controlled and lesser time. So it's a wonderful experience for children, right? So that's good. And then Rath Yatra festivals, you need to have a vacation. Go where Rath Yatra is happening if you can. And that's what used to be, what we used to try to do. Go for Rath Yatras. And along the way, if there's something like theme parks or aquariums or zoos or Disneyland, okay, we stop on the way, right? So that was the thing. Okay, we're going for LA Rath Yatra, and along the way there's Disneyland. Okay, we can stop there. And I tell you, because my children never grew up with Mickey Mouse and all that, when they went to Disneyland, they were sorely disappointed. You don't grow up with these Disney things. And then each ride that you take is like, the lines were like forever, you know. You're just waiting and waiting. They never asked us again to go there. You know, so again, you know. So yeah, but it's something, you know, everybody does it. Okay, you do it, you know. And that's fine. And national parks and all that. That's fun. That's really nice, clean fun, you know. You go on a hike, you go to a hotel, you cook your you take a little cooker, you cook a khichdi or something there, you offer it, you have the prasadam as a you know, as a family. So you're still doing the same thing that everybody else does, just the consciousness is different. So there's nothing that, it's not like devotees cannot have fun, you know. It's everything can be done, you know, within, of course, proper things, right? But you do it in a way that's Krishna conscious. You still cook your prasad. You don't try to eat from a restaurant, and you still do your little morning program in the morning before going on a hike. And you see, and you go on a hike, and your perspective is a bit different, right? So a child growing up in this way in Krishna consciousness is not going to feel deprived. That I'm a devotee, so I got deprived, you know, by this and that. No, obviously not, because there's so much fun. Anyway, so this is about that. Discipline is a huge topic. I bet I'm not going to get there.
Discipline for parents or for children?
Discipline for parents? No, it's for children. So anyway, discipline is a very not so much there. But again, discipline coming out of Krishna consciousness is a lot easier to handle. Here Prabhupada is saying how inducing them to be out of loving spirit is much better than trying to discipline without Krishna consciousness. In other words, reading Srimad Bhagavatam and living a lifestyle like that, obviously there's going to be fewer problems, right? And there should be love and trust between the parents and children. That really helps in good obedience and following, you know. Is when there's love and trust between the parents and children. In other words, there has to be both love and discipline, which we can call it enlightenment and encouragement. Now, discipline we tend to think as punishment. Okay, if you don't do this, but discipline is not just punishment. You know, it's about enlightenment. In other words, it's about giving the reason why you want him to do something in a certain way. You know, giving the reason behind that. Enlightenment, right? So if we do only enlightenment without encouragement, which is love, so if you only discipline and no love there, then obviously it becomes authoritarian, right? Such a child becomes very rebellious, and he may take it now, but he checks out after he grows up. He's not going to take it, right? So that's what happens, right? But what if we just give encouragement without discipline? It's too permissive, right? Everything is okay. Actually, the child develops low self-esteem because of lack of discipline. Because he thinks that I'm not good enough for parents to discipline me, to correct me. So it doesn't work that way either. To become, now there's a new way of thinking that you just let the child decide or something. I'm not going to say anything. No. So both encouragement and enlightenment, and you see that in the case of Arjuna and Krishna, both was there. Krishna gave him all that philosophy, and but he also encouraged. He said, now Arjuna, you decide what you want to, now deliberate what you want. Arjuna becomes really pensive, starts thinking, because he's really confused. Krishna said so many things in the Bhagavad Gita. He said this in the first chapter and second chapter and this yoga and that chapter and like that. So he's getting really confused, and Krishna is given everything, all the enlightenment, but then he becomes very compassionate after that. And he says, okay Arjuna, don't worry. And he gives him the highest knowledge, the most confidential knowledge. And not only that, he's so compassionate, so loving that he doesn't let Arjuna, he wants to keep on explaining to him. He said, I actually, if you haven't understood, I'm ready to give you the whole Bhagavad Gita again. So parenting is like that. We try to enlighten our children, give them the things, the knowledge, But at the same time, the encouragement has to be there. When he gets that discipline, when he does it, then keep encouraging him. Like applaud him. Okay. To applaud him. One time I was trying to tell my older son to write. He wouldn't write because he said, "Oh, I've got this mental block." And then I said, "No, no, no, you write," and he wouldn't write. And then I got really upset with him, and I said, "Okay, you have 10 minutes, 10 pages." And then he said, "What? I can't even write 10 pages in 1 minute." Anyway, so I said, "No, you're going to write." So I went away, and then suddenly, out of worry that my mother is going to get angry, he started writing, and his mental block released. The writer's block we call it, right? He started writing, and then he wrote. Obviously, he didn't write 10 pages, right? He wrote whatever he could write, but it all started coming out, and then I came back and I started applauding him. Wow, look at this! So you see, the discipline is there. I threatened him a little bit because he had this writer's block. So out of fear, he started writing. It all came out, but then he says, again, wow, you did such a wonderful thing. So both, some discipline has to be there, but not without encouragement, without that love. Has to go on side by side. If you forget one or the other, then it's a problem. Only love, no discipline, never works. Yes. Yes,
Can there be different disciplines for different ages also?
Oh yes, Prabhupada talked about that. 0 to 5, because it depends on the responsibility that the child can take. 0 to 5, naturally minimal responsibility, right? So accordingly, minimal discipline. It's still there, but minimal. Then 5 to 10, more. And I think he said there's more discipline because the child is old enough to learn responsibility, right? 10 to 15, I think he said, you should be as strict as a tiger. That's the age, he said. I mean, Prabhupada said that, right? Why? Because at that time, you cannot afford the child to make mistakes that he's going to regret for life. Okay. And then after 15, you become their friends, he said. Because we don't realize that as parents, we are so attached to the body. We see them grow. We see their body. We don't see their subtle body, but we just see their gross body. So we become very unreasonable with them because we want them to be in a certain way, but their subtle body is actually changing, which we don't see. Right? And that's why we have to see what's going on in their subtle body and why they're behaving the way they're behaving, and that's why we need to be more like friends. You see? Because it's just taking a lot of change. But not, completely as a friend, you're still like, you're still there, the superior, your parent, and you still have some, authority. It's not like that. Like there's some still, you have you can discipline them and all that, but not at that level, between 5 and 10, you see. Mhm. So it changes according to what it is.
Krsna from online.
Okay.
If the situation of both parents is not favorable for homeschooling, so can in that situation can we go for private education like Montessori rather than sending them to public school?
Yes, of course.
And second is it okay if we can do morning program at weekends if weekdays are busy?
Just do morning program on the weekends?
Only.
Yes, of course. I mean, anything is better than nothing. That's the whole thing. If you can do it. Now during the day, other days, if it's really busy, you can just sing the prayers, which takes 5 minutes without any worship. If you just sing it. So that anybody can do, right? So, if you just sing it right now, you're going to feel something, right? It's not like, you're just going to think about the words. And if you know the meanings, I've had situations where all I can do because I'm in a rush to catch a flight or whatever it is, just to be able to sing it, to say it. And it makes a difference. And then do a nice one on the weekend. Okay. Yes. You have a question?
Yeah, sure.
I really appreciate everything that you said. Everything that comes out of your mouth was light and wisdom. Thank you so much.
The prayer goes to Srila Prabhupada, obviously, because I would be not here without what he gave to the world. I would be so mired up in material life. Seriously. Okay, so we'll stop here. Any other? Okay, I think we should stop and okay, Mataji. One last question. Okay, one last.
Just want to make an announcement about the books.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we have like Srimad Bhagavatam. It's like for kids. Mataji has and her team has published these books, and we have till Canto 7. There are more cantos coming up, and there's also one pink book we say that's homeschooling Krishna's children. So whatever you heard today is all there and more.
Well, even though the title is homeschooling, but it's about parenting.
Yes.
So it's relevant even for parents. And this is really the foundation, I mean, like the real. And so please try to read that smaller book, for sure, because it really is the essence, really.
And just, and Mataji already talked about the price for all the 6 books, the parenting book. The price is $145 Canadian dollars. And if anyone wants to buy these books, you can come contact me, and we can do like a email transfer like that. And yeah, there's another devotee say something.
No, just a question. Do you also have e-book available for the?
But these books are being, will be certified as a degree course. They've approved it pretty much at Mayapur. Jayapataka Swami is working for that. In other words, his vision is that children should get a Bhakti Vaibhav degree. He'll call it something, but Bhakti Vaibhav, which will be equivalent, like they won't have to do the adult course. Because this was really a systematic study.
Not this one, but the one for homeschooling, for parenting book, the pink book. Do you have that one e-book available?
Oh yeah, it's available as
Okay.
On Amazon.
Yeah.
You can get it. Yes.
And even all these books are available on Amazon, but it's little pricey over there. I would say double the price. But Mataji is giving like her author's discount. Say she's paying back to us. So yeah, it would be better if we can get it today.
Thank you really very much, Mataji. That is a very important discussion because we all emphasize on preaching. Imagine every couple take up this duty just to raise their children in Krishna consciousness. For the next future generation, we already have an army of devotees ready. Isn't that true? Yeah. If we all take up responsibility just to make our children Krishna conscious devotees, then we already have a big army of devotees. And plus, on top of that, we can help with the other preaching activities. That's also good. So those who want to make an order for all the books, please contact Govindamani Mataji. And we have prasadam for everybody.
Sadhana Mataji taking the
whole set. Thank you. And we have prasadam, way more than what we all can take. So I request you to take more for your family members who could not make it. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I'm gonna take.
Is that okay? I
Yes,
took it off.
yeah.